So what I'm doing now is I'm doing the big picture stuff, and I'm going to go into specific property selection. So we're still doing macro level property stuff, and then we're going to do micro level, and that'll be it. So the micro level is actually which properties do I choose. Okay, we're still doing macro level stuff. So claiming depreciation, BMT, as I said, is probably one of the best companies to use. If you want to definitely get a depreciation schedule, you'd be crazy not to get one. Claiming depreciation, whether you're PYG or self-employed, just go to the ATO website, download the income tax withholding variation form. Your accounting should be, this is one-on-one accounting, this is not even complex. So your accounting should be able to claim this for you, and that way you get your deductions taken out with every pay cycle. You don't have to wait to the end of the year to claim that benefit. In this example, this particular client, there was no way they would be able to afford to pay $4,355. Okay, it was just not an option for them. They didn't know that you can claim depreciation on the building and fixtures and fittings and all cash deductions with every pay cycle. They had no idea they could do that. It's very similar to salary sacrificing your mortgage or your car. You're just paying for things with your pre-tax dollars. So really the goal of an investor is to get rid of all your tax. Now, I wouldn't invest in property just to get rid of my tax, okay? That's not the reason you invest in property. But I'm saying is you need to maximize everything. And if you're paying 25 grand a year in tax, well, you're either giving it to the Rudd government or it's going into your back pocket. You have to decide. I can tell you now, wealthy individuals pay hardly any tax at all. One of the clients that I used to look after in Melbourne, for example, was he headed up the trauma ward at one of the major hospitals in the city. He was a cardiovascular specialist, and he had the whole trauma ward that he was looking after. Now, he was typically averaging about $450,000 per year in income. The year that I looked after him and I financed a couple of cars for him, he actually declared his income about $18,500, and he paid tax on that. Now, how many people here declare more than $18,500? Do you know why you're declaring more? Because you just haven't got the right consultants or the knowledge to declare less. And this is all legal, by the way. I'm not talking about dodgy tax avoidance schemes here. I'm talking about legally getting rid of your tax by focusing on investment opportunities like this. That's all it is. So everything that we do is 100%. So the claiming depreciation, very simple. And if you're interested in that, just speak to 21st Century Accounting. They'll be able to help you out with that. Okay, commandment number 7. You must ensure that your assets are insured and protected by a comprehensive risk management strategy. Fix your interest rates if you have, I guess, for the clients that we discussed before, I knew that they wouldn't be in a position to buy any properties for the next 3 or 4 years. That's why I fixed their rate at 5.04 with CBA. And we fixed it so to make sure for the next 3 years, there'll be no surprises for them. Okay? So if you're not in a situation where you can buy property and accumulate aggressively, and whatever your situation is, fixing your rate could be one of the ways that you take the risk out of the equation. To me, and I'll show you why in a little while when we talk about the valuation process, it's one of the worst things to do. But for that couple, there was no other option. So in that example, yes, fixing rates does reduce your risk. Adequate property insurance. Sufficient personal risk. Now, who's ever seen people, I mean, in Melbourne this happens all the time, on current affairs, where they've bought a property somewhere, and then they went into the property 6 months later and it's all destroyed and they kicked the holes in the walls and they're all crying. Who's ever seen those? Yeah? What you want to do with the property is every 5 years, you might want to write this down, you want to advertise your property in the Hells Angels Weekly, biker-friendly property, including 1 slab, short-term lease, and you want to hope they destroy your property. Do you know why? Because you've got landlord's insurance, and your kitchen roughly has a depreciation schedule of 5 to 6 years. So every 5 to 6 years, you want to have your kitchen completely destroyed. You get a brand new kitchen, ring up BMT, get a brand new depreciation schedule. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, right? I'm being funny here, but it's like buying a car with no insurance. Why would you ever buy a vehicle with no insurance? So those people that have their properties destroyed, obviously they haven't got the right insurance in place. You just don't invest without insurance. It's just the cost of doing business. But I've never understood these people crying over those properties. Oh, the kitchen got destroyed. Great, get a new one, brand new depreciation. When you're doing renovations, you've got to be careful that when you're doing a renovation, there's a difference between capital improvement and replacing new for old, and there's a different depreciation treatment. When you're changing the aesthetics of the property in such a way that it's a capital improvement, the depreciation is only 2.5% over 40 years. But if you're replacing new for old, okay, so I'm talking about carpets, I'm talking about roof, etc., then you can depreciate that asset as a fixture and fitting, which is much more aggressive and you're getting more money back. So when you're doing any kind of renovation, you've got to make sure that you speak to a quantity surveyor before you start the renovation and tell him exactly what you're doing to the property. Because what you're doing to the property could have different tax implications. And I've done 3 renovations so far, and last one nearly cost me my marriage, so I'm not doing a 4th one. But you want to make sure that you are checking exactly what you're putting into the property. So, because people just jump in, they start doing a bunch of things, and then they worry about all the deduction stuff later on, it's too late. They've got to take photographs of what you're actually taking out of the property. It's all got to be documented accurately. So once again, it comes back to the theme of putting the structures and putting everything in place before you start anything. Getting the right people on board before you start doing anything. Constant market research. Know what's happening that can affect your asset. If there's a petrol station being built in your street that you're not aware of, that could adversely affect the capital growth of your property. If there's power lines being put up in your street, whatever it is, you need to be aware of changes to your particular suburb that may affect your property. And if it's something is to happen like that, you need to sell the property before it happens. You can never have too much insurance, it's the cost of doing business. So if you're not willing to take out landlord's insurance, etc., you might as well not invest in property. You've got to have all the insurances in place. If you don't have insurances in place, it's the easiest way to go under. And it's very expensive to claw your way back, especially with property, because mistakes in property usually end up costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Usually when people make a mistake, it's not $1,000 or $2,000, it's usually very expensive. Life insurance, total and permanent disablement, income protection insurance, landlord's insurance, building and contents, etc. So make sure you've got your insurances in place. You can get a lot of these from 21st Century Insurance, but some things like landlord's insurance, obviously you want to ring around and get the best quote. Number 7. You must have an investment system that is specific and all-encompassing, that implements all the investment components, requiring minimum ongoing passive involvement. The key with this is, what I'm about to show you, it's passive, it's predictable, it's consistent. And that's a very important thing when it comes to property accumulation. Investors without an all-encompassing and specific system can be misled by focusing exclusively on the purchase price, forgetting the long-term benefits. I don't really bargain when I look at properties. People always try to get the best deal by getting cheaper properties. I'm going to show you how I choose properties, and I'm going to give you the exact criteria. To me, the price that I buy the property for isn't really that important. It's the type of property that I buy, and I'm going to explain that in a second. It's the same with the interest rates. I don't really care what the interest rate is. I mean, I'm not going to go for the most expensive interest rate, but for me, it's the flexibility and the structure that's the most important. The interest rate comes as a secondary priority. It's the same with property price. So I'm going to talk about property prices and what properties I would recommend that you target as an investor and why you should target those specific properties. Now, if we talk about the property cycle goes up and down. And it's usually, depending on the state, it's between a 7 and a 12-year cycle. And the cycles are getting shorter and shorter in Melbourne and Sydney. And there's different states doing different things at different times of the year. If you look at a more detailed property cycle, we've got different events that trigger other events that are affecting the property market in Australia. So for example, we're at the top of the boom, which we're not there yet. But if we go back, I'll just read these out and I'll give you a bit of an explanation. If we have rising interest rates, usually the cost of borrowing goes up for companies. Therefore, they're not expanding, they're making as much money. Therefore, they have falling share prices, falling commodity prices, falling overseas reserves, tighter money, falling real estate values. This was about 2 years ago. Then we've got falling interest rates, because what the government does is automatically they kick in monetary policy, trying to stimulate the economy. So we've got falling interest rates, rising share prices, rising commodity prices, rising overseas reserves, easier money, and we've got the property cycle booming again. If you look at the property cycle, the way we measure property growth is through the median price. The median price is the middle property sold in one market compared to the middle property sold in another market. It could be measured in monthly, weekly, whatever it is, quarterly, yearly. This is probably the most useless way of measuring the property market that I've come across, and it's the most misleading. And I'm going to qualify that with examples. So let me just explain so everyone understands how the property market is actually measured. So here we've got a hypothetical market, and we've got 9 properties. And the middle property sold in that market is $900,000. We don't use the average of that market. The average, meaning if you add all 9 properties together and divide it by 9, is 1.4 million. But the whole purpose of the median price is to give you a representation of the typical type of property that is in that market. So it's the middle property. And then what you do is you compare the middle price of one property market compared to another. So for example, in Melbourne last year grew at 11.3%. If you're looking at a market, when they say Melbourne grew 11.3%, all that means is that if you look at, say, in Melbourne, whatever the properties were sold in that year, it was in the thousands of properties, all that means that the relationship between this property and the relationship with this property, the difference in price is 11.3%. To me as an investor, when I started investing, I used to focus a lot on median prices. Now, I don't even look at this stuff. It's the most useless statistics I could ever imagine. Because in 2008, the middle property could have been an apartment in Ascot Vale, and last year it could have been a house in Dandenong. So what do I care what the relationship is between an apartment in Ascot Vale versus a house in Dandenong on the other side of the city? Isn't that the most useless statistic you can imagine? It's like saying, this person drives a Commodore, and then this person drives a Camry, and then what does it mean? It means nothing. And the whole industry is based on this. 11.3, Brisbane's heading the market recovery with 12.7. Who gives a stuff? It doesn't mean anything, does it? Because I invest in a suburb in a house. I don't invest in the property market or the index. So why do I care that out of all the suburbs in Melbourne, the middle property, which could be 6,000 properties sold over a period of time, was an apartment in Ascot Vale versus a house in Dandenong? Can anyone tell me what the relevance to the investor is with that statistic? Yeah, this is what the whole industry is based on. Okay, I'll give you another example. In Melbourne, Sunshine. Sunshine is an area that was quite average. It's an up-and-coming area now. So 10 years ago it was crap. Blue-collar area, 7 to 9 k's from the city. The average house in Sunshine is about $380,000 to $450,000. It's semi-industrial and it's semi-commercial as well. So you have a street where there's a car yard and there's houses next to it. It's been a rough area, but it's so close to the city. It's the only option for a lot of people to get into the property market, that close to the city. In Sunshine, there's a brand new estate called the Callaway Estate, where they're selling brand new townhouses for around $560,000, $500,000. So if you're reading the Australian Property Investor magazine, there's been months where Sunshine grew by 18%. So let me give you an example of why this happens. And I'm going to show you real statistics on RP data in a second. So I'm just telling you stuff just for the sake of telling you. I'm going to show you real examples. So you might have a market where Sunshine's had the following sales. Okay, this could be one market in Sunshine, and then this could be another market in Sunshine. Which actually happened. Because this estate started selling these townhouses. So if you compare the middle property, which is the median property, to this property, people would say, well, that means there's a difference there of 20%. There's not a difference there of 20% because this property is a 1970s unrenovated property and this is a brand new townhouse. These properties are not comparable. This property is closer comparable to this property. So when people buy the Australian Property Investor magazine, they go to the back and they read the capital growth of the suburb, they get excited. It really doesn't mean anything because you can't use that information. It's what I call nonsense statistics. Technically correct, but inapplicable. So what you've got to do as an investor is you've got to filter out all the crap that's out there and just focus on the stuff that's going to make you money. Would you agree? Because there's so much information out there, people don't even know what to read and what to look for. So how do you establish the value of a property? The way you establish the value of the property is that a valuer has to go out and value the property. How does the valuer establish the value of a specific property? If you've got a property for $620,000, and I'm about to show you the valuation, the valuer would go out to that suburb, and let's say this is a suburb in Newport, for example, which is a suburb of Melbourne, and this is a three-bedroom townhouse. They'll go out and they say, okay, how many other townhouses have sold in that suburb that are superior, comparable, or inferior? And they'll try to come to an estimate of what the property should be worth. So the first thing they do is they find 3 comparable sales or 3 properties that have sold in the same suburb within a 10% price point. So it could be 60 that way, 62 that way. The second thing they do is they work out the land component of that property. So that townhouse could have a land component of 230 square metres, and they work out the average cost of construction per square metre, and they try to work out the replacement value of that property. Based on those 2 pieces of information, they arrive at a figure for that property. So let me just show you a real valuation of a townhouse, and I'll just show you exactly how valuers establish the value of these properties. This is a property in Thorpe Street in Newport. The valuer in this instance is a company called WBP, and this is a townhouse that is being valued, and this is actually a property that we sourced at 21st Century Property Direct. Now, the first thing that the valuer does, he assesses the market risk as well. So the risk potential is location of the neighbourhood. 5 is high risk, 0 is no risk. Usually they put 2s and 3s in these squares. The land, the environmental issues, improvements, and then also the reduced value in the next 2 or 3 years. 3, market volatility. This was done about a year ago. So it gives you an idea of, look, this is where I think the market's at the moment, in my opinion. And this varies from valuer to valuer. Some valuers, at the peak of the subprime fallout, were putting 4s and 3s, which means personally they believe the market had high volatility. When the market's booming, they tick 1s and 2s, meaning they think the market's fairly safe, nothing's going to happen, properties are very likely to go up in value. In this particular example, the property is worth $620,000. It's got a rental of $480 per week. But the way the actual valuation is established, and you go through land and main building, is this. And this is the most important page. What he's done is he's found other properties that have sold in the same area. So we've got different addresses there. We've got Newport. We've got built in 2008, 3-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, rendered brick walls, etc. 182 square living areas. And then they rank it either as superior, equal, or inferior. So in this example, it's a superior property. It's 670, it's bigger, superior, larger house and allotment, similar accommodation quality. 635, comparable, similar style. 575, inferior, similar accommodation, inferior quality condition. Slightly inferior, superior, okay? So what they're doing is they're trying to find out, based on comparable sales, what's the market doing? And if you look at there, you've got 610, slightly inferior. So you're getting a gut feeling of, it's roughly 620. The contract was 620, so the valuation came in at contract. Now this valuer would only stick to a cluster of 3 or 4 suburbs maximum. So he might do Newport, Altona, Williamstown, Altona Beach. He does on average 5 to 8 valuations per day. And usually valuers stay in the same career for a long time. It's a very specialised area. They don't change careers quite frequently. So that means that the average valuer would have done hundreds of valuations in Newport. Chances are, when he looks at the address, he already knows where the property is. Chances are he's valued all the properties in the street, and chances are, because each property sells every 7 years, if it's an established property built in the 50s, he would have done 2 or 3 valuations already on that property, and he's probably got a file on those properties. So valuers are experts in a specific area, and they specialise and they look after a cluster of suburbs. As a sophisticated investor, you want to make sure you become friends with these people. Because when I do research and due diligence, rather than me driving around the suburb and talking to the locals, a phone call to a valuer will save you so much time and money, because you can ask him, in Newport, let's say his name is Bill, what's the best street in Newport and why, in terms of resale value? And he'll tell you, Smith Street's the best because it's the best trees, it's the most sought after street, it's walking distance to school and restaurants. And also ask him, what's the worst street in Newport? And he'll say it's Atkinson Street. Why? Because there used to be a factory there and there's contaminated land, for example. Okay? And then you can go and check for yourself and work out what's happening in that particular suburb. So these people are an invaluable resource. Now, when you get a loan from a bank, the banks have a panel of valuers that they use called an approved panel of valuers. And every lender in Australia has that particular panel. Now, you can't get this panel of valuers. They're not allowed to send them to you. This is the panel for ING in Brisbane that I'm not showing you at the moment. If you ring up ING and says, can you please email me, don't write these down by the way, can you email me your panel of preferred valuers? They'll say, no, it's not our policy. So if you go directly, you can't get a list. Brokers are not allowed to give you these lists as well. Okay, they've been instructed not to give you this list. If you ring up the valuer, they'll tell you which panel they're on. So if you ring up Herron Todd White and say, who do you look after? Which panel are you on? They'll say, oh, look, everyone, CBA, ING, etc., NAV. The key thing is this, even though a valuer could be an approved valuer by the particular lender, meaning Herron Todd White could be an approved valuer for ING, in a particular area that might not be the preferential approved valuer, meaning they could use Chartered Kramer for that particular suburb. So how do you get hands on these lists? The way you get your hands on this list is you become very friendly with mortgage brokers. And because they work long hours, it's amazing how sometimes they send you stuff which they shouldn't, because all the attachments look the same, right? Not that we would do that, that's completely out against the policy, okay? But it's happened in the past to clients. So what you do is, this is how you influence the valuation process. You need to understand who the valuers are, and then you need to buy properties that are specifically placed at around the median price of the suburb and influence the valuation process. I'm about to show you this. Now, this is probably one of the most important things that you can learn as a property investor. And if you master this skill, there's really very little that you need to know apart from this. So let me just go through this. So the median price of the suburb is basically the middle of the property market. Now, the property market in Australia only does 10%, but there's an emotional peak and a reactive low. So it overshoots the market and there's a correction. But if you're planning to do any kind of cash flow analysis, just work it at 10% around the major capital cities. If you look at the median price of the suburb, I'm about to show you which properties you should be targeting based on the median price and how you find out the median price of each suburb. So each suburb in Australia, in every major capital city, a time ago, used to be a brand new estate. Would you agree with that? Developer came in, subdivided the land, and they sold the land. So that means there's two things. Number one, there should be a majority of houses in each suburb roughly the same price, or there should be at least a cluster of them because suburbs get redeveloped over time. And architecturally, there should be one type of property in a suburb that dominates the whole suburb. Would you agree? Because it used to be a brand new estate, and when it's a brand new estate, there's usually one or two developers that do the same type of property. It doesn't matter if it was 1930s, Art Deco. It doesn't matter if it's period homes. There's always one type of property that dominates a suburb. It could be old Queenslanders, whatever it is. So the first thing that you do is once you choose a suburb, you need to understand that if you map out in terms of dollars, if you map out the sales in that suburb, eventually there's going to be a cluster of properties sold around the middle of that particular bell-shaped curve. Okay, so this is, anyone studied statistics here? Unfortunately, I did. And whenever you have a type of an event occur often enough, there's a bell-shaped curve phenomenon that occurs, right? Which means there's a cluster of these properties sold around the median price. Let's say the middle property here is $500,000. So there's an equal amount of properties on that side and an equal amount of properties on that side. Would you agree? So what you need to do as an investor is you need to invest, if this suburb has a median price of $500,000, you only buy properties between $450,000 and $500,000. And they need to be architecturally the most common type of property in the suburb. Why? Because when you revalue the property, you want to have the most amount of choice or ability to revalue the property at a high reference point. So that means that if you buy a property, let's say the whole suburb has Queenslanders in it, well, let's say it's Art Deco property, for example, and your property is worth 500, and the majority of properties here are architecturally Art Deco properties, the moment another property gets sold higher than your property, which could be 550, and it's comparable, you have then the right to revalue your property based on the new comparable. But if you buy a unique property, let's say the whole suburb is made out of period homes and there's only one Art Deco property and it's 1.2 million, but it's the best property in the suburb, but the median price is 500. Are you going to have a good chance of revaluing your property every 6 months? No. What if you buy a bargain at 280? It's the only property of its type here. Is that a good thing? No. So what you want to do is buy number one, the most common type of property architecturally. Number two, 10% below the median price, which means you have a great chance of having high comparable sales to choose from. Now, there's a tool that we'll go into, and I'm just going to show you, and I'm hoping get an internet connection here. There's a website called MyRP Data where you get a free suburb profile report. So I'm going to go into free suburb profile report, and I'm going to choose an area. Now, because I know Melbourne quite well, I'm just going to choose Victoria, and I'm going to choose a suburb called Moorabbin. Actually, I'll choose Bentley. So with this tool, what it gives me the median price of the suburb, which is $745,000. It also gives me the demographics of the suburb. It gives me the age of the people, and what you want to do is you want to target suburbs where the majority of the people are between 30 and 40 years of age. You don't want to have a suburb where there's a majority of people retired, and I'll tell you why in a second. If you look at the household income, what you want to do is you want to have a bell-shaped curve. Not like that, but also you want to have an indication that there's money in the suburb, meaning that you've got young people with money. Because what are they going to do to their houses? They're going to renovate. Now, if you look at the typical property, 745, it gives you a lot of information there about median prices. Have a look at the capital growth in median prices. Moorabbin has grew by 27.2% in 2010, and then it lost 1.1% and 34%. Why is it going up and down so much? Because there's a variance in price points in the suburb. So 1 year or 1 month, the middle property could be a flat. Another time it could be a house. It just means, remember, median prices are just a relation between the middle property sold in one period of time compared to another. That's all it means. Now, if you go to the actual sales, you can get a good idea of the actual variance. 647, 930,000. You want to have at least a 30% variance in the price of the suburb. I'll explain to you why in a second. Median prices for the past 5 years going up. It's a great suburb to invest in. Okay, so I can just, it's actually quite a good area, and it gives you a map of the area. Okay. So if you're investing in Bentley, you will target properties around 745,000. And what kind of properties are most common in Bentley? They're actually those nasty 1970s red brick homes with a Batterwax living room. You can't do anything with them. Now, if you hate those properties, and there's a few properties in Bentley that are Art Deco, you would buy the most common type of property. Why? Because you've got a variance of 30% where the moment you get a high comparable sale, you can revalue your property. Think about who lives in Bentley. It's young couples that move into Bentley. Young professional couples that have sold the previous property and they're buying the next property. They're emotionally driven. And if the market's doing well, they go in at auctions and they overpay for properties. Who's ever seen properties sold at 100,000 above a vendor reserve? So what's the market? Isn't it the vendor reserve? Or is it whatever anyone's prepared to pay on the day? Whatever's anyone prepared to on the day. So with property, you want people to get emotional about those properties in your suburbs, and you want them to overpay. Because the moment they do so, that creates a reference for you to revalue the property. Okay? So number one, architecturally, the most common type of property. Number two, what's the middle property sold, which is the median price, and you buy 10% below the middle price. Number three, you need to have the following things. Let me show you a suburb that does nothing in terms of capital growth that you should never invest in Melbourne, okay? And I'll show you a couple of examples why. So there's Bentley there. Now we're going to generate a PDF document. We're going to come back to this. And we're going to say this on the desktop. And I'm just going to show you, because you can do this in Brisbane, you can do it you can do it in every major capital city.
Is this software you have to buy? Or is it...
No, it's free online. Now, by the way, when I talk about these suburbs, and I hope I'm not offending anyone here, I'm sure there's no one here from Melbourne, but I'm not talking about bad investments, good investments based on because they're nasty places to live in. I'm talking about purely unemotional due diligence based on suburbs, okay? So I'm not saying that the next suburb is bad to live in. I'm just saying for investment reasons, this is exactly where you should never invest. And I'm going to qualify that. Yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it? Okay, so the suburb I'm referring to here is Narre Warren. It's in Melbourne. It's $360,000, which is the median price. Now, the number one thing is this. The demographics, that's fine, okay? That's actually not bad. You've got a lot of young kids there. You haven't got a lot of retired people. You've got people around that. The problem is this. This is exactly the type of bell-shaped curve that you don't want to see in your suburb. You don't want to see the average household income at $41,000 to $62,000 because these people will not improve the value of these properties, and this suburb will never be a suburb that people aspire to live in. It's a suburb that people get into and get out of. Okay, so this suburb doesn't generate a lot of capital growth. The problem with the suburb is this. It's got consistent capital growth. You're doing 6 to 8%. But the problem is, have a look at the property price range. The property price range is you've got the same property being sold over and over and over, because the original subdivision was very cheap. So you've got properties between $296 to $320. Does it give you a lot of range to revalue your property and create $50,000? No. So the range has to be at least 30% plus. If it's less than that, you're going to be sitting on this property. This property is, by the way, Narre Warren will double every 10 years, but you're going to have to wait 30 years to build a large property portfolio with these types of properties. So the problem with Narre Warren is, number one, it's the same. The estate was sold very quickly. It's virtually identical demographics, identical income bands, and you have no chance of controlling the valuation process, which I'm about to show you how to do. The median prices, very consistent growth. Okay, so you can't lose money in the suburb. And look at the capital growth. 9.97, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong. In terms of the suburb and aesthetically, it's quite a good suburb. But I'm saying for investment purposes, it's one of the worst things you can do if you want aggressive capital growth. Let's have a look at an area that gives you one of the best areas to invest in Melbourne, which is St Kilda West. I'm going to show you the difference in terms of just how to analyse suburbs. Okay, so we've got a really good. Have a look at that, 892,000. What would you say about the people that live in St Kilda West? Would you say that generally the younger yuppie people that live in St Kilda, when they drink cappuccinos all day, drive Beamers, go to the beach, work in the city? No kids, right? Because you don't have kids in St Kilda West. The moment you meet someone, you get out of St Kilda West to have kids, okay? If you're in St Kilda West, you don't have kids, okay? Income band, perfect. Okay, that's exactly what you want. Okay, St Kilda West, for those of you, everyone know where St Kilda is in Melbourne, it's just right there on the beach near the city, it's 4 k's out, all right? Bang, straight up. Now what I'm showing you here, you can use the same thing in Brisbane. This is the same methodology, So once you understand how to read the signs, this is all you need to do. These people love renovating and upgrading their properties. They will do not only cosmetic renovations, they'll do structural renovations. They'll add bedrooms, they'll go up, they'll go sideways. Okay, so St Kilda West is one of the best areas you can invest in long term. You've got a different variety of properties.
That's even if they wouldn't have kids.
Yeah, yep, just to entertain and have barbecues. Have a look at that, 59% capital growth. And then zero. Why do you have that? I'll tell you why. Because St Kilda West has mansions that sell for $2 million and apartments. And let's have a look at the prices of properties that are sold. Can you see there? You've got a property for 2.3 million, and then you've got probably a townhouse or an apartment for 805. So there's a great variance between properties. That's why I remember the median price is just a middle property of one market compared to the other. So can anyone tell me what a $2 million mansion has to do with a 2-bedroom apartment in St Kilda West? So do I care that I'm getting 59% capital growth? Is that real? It's nonsense statistics, isn't it? And this is yet how the whole industry measures capital growth. Everyone's obsessed with this capital growth. The media, Melbourne's heading the recovery and Sydney's just behind. See, when they say there's a Brisbane market is just a word. It's independent suburbs with individual streets, and they're doing independent things based on people that are living in those suburbs. Even streets individually in a suburb outperform the whole suburb. Would you agree with that? Yep. There are streets that just do better than the rest of the suburb. So what does all this mean? You can generate these reports, and the first thing, and this is a free service, there's St Kilda West right on the beach. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you, and this is really one of the most important things you can learn as an investor. Let's say you're buying an apartment or you're buying a townhouse. We'll go back to this area here, and you're buying a property for $500,000. You've just seen that there's been properties sold at a higher price point. How do you know there's been properties sold? Because what you can do with RP data as an investor is when you go into the RP data report, you actually go and you can buy 6 monthly suburb reports. So the 6 monthly suburb reports, you can buy for $29, you can buy a street sales history, which is every property sold in that street, a suburb sales history for 12 months. So every 12 months, you basically buy a report that gives you the details of every property sold in the suburb and the agent that sold the property. The moment you have a comparable sale that is higher than your property, you ring up the value and revalue the property. And this is exactly what you do. So let's say you've got this property here for $500,000. You're buying a property at $450,000 at the lower end of the median price. So what you're targeting effectively is properties here, because then you have the highest chance of getting a high comparable sale. Let's say you're using NAB, and NAB uses Heron Todd White as the valuer for this property. So when you settle the property in the professional property package with NAB, you find out who the valuer was on your property. Okay? And let's say it's Bill, for example. You ring up Bill and say, "Hi Bill, I understand you were the valuer on my property that I settled with NAB. My name is Konrad. I'm a professional property investor. I buy and hold properties and I never sell them. I'm going to be using you over the next few years in an effort to revalue my property and increase my line of credit. And what I'm going to be doing is looking out for higher comparable sales in the suburb. And the moment I have a higher comparable sale, I will be contacting you personally so you can do a private valuation for me. And that valuation will cost you around $250. So let's say 6 months later, there's a property that's sold on the market at $550,000, or let's say it's sold for $500,000, and your property is $450,000, and it's virtually the same property. Let's say this one's a little bit better. So it's not quite 500 yet, but it's probably $490, $480. You ring up Bill from Heron Todd White, and you said, "Could you come around, please, and do a valuation on my property?" And you do a private valuation. But the valuation that you request, write this down, is called a short form mortgage purpose valuation. Short form mortgage purpose valuation. And you say, "Bill, what I'm going to do is, I know there's a property that's sold around the corner for $50,000 more. I know it's a little bit superior than mine. Here are the details of the property. I want to increase my valuation because I want to increase the line of credit, because I want to buy another property. I'm never ever planning to sell this property." I'll tell you why you say those words in a second. So you pay him $250 and you get a valuation. Now, chances are the valuation, and I'll show you how to present the information as well, should come in at $490, $480. You also ask Bill from Herring Todd White, which other lenders are you currently on the panel of? And let's say he says, well, ING uses me all the time, and ANZ uses me all the time. What you do is, you ring up NAB, and you say, hi, I want to revalue my property that I've just purchased in suburb XYZ, and I've got a valuation, and I want to increase my line of credit. And NAB will say to you, okay, what we need to do is we need to order a valuation. And then you say, I've actually ordered a valuation from Bill from Herring Todd White. He was the original valuer on my loan. And they will say, yes, but our policy is, you've got a private valuation. What we need is a mortgage purpose short form valuation. And then you say, guess what? Don't say that Konrad told me, okay? I actually ordered a funny thing you say that. I've ordered a short form mortgage purpose valuation. Can I have the valuation redirected to the bank? And then they'll say one of two things. It's not our standard policy to redirect valuations. Or they'll say, yes, that's fine. If you can have it redirected, we'll lend you, we'll increase the line of credit facility against it. Or 50% of the time, they'll say, no, it's not our standard policy to accept redirected valuations. And that's when you say, that's fine, because ING is also looking after me, or potentially I'm going to go to ING and refinance this property with them, because I know they also accept Bill's valuation from Herring Todd White. Do you have any exit fees with your loan? None. Would the retention manager call you? Yes. Konrad, you're leaving us. Mate, I've been leaving you for the last 6 years. So that's how you control the valuation process. So can everyone grab the property research kit? Because this is the way you present the information to the valuers. Now, can I get a coloured copy one, Christine? Can I get one that's actually filled out as well? This is the sample kit. The sample kit is the black and white one, which has been filled out already. Great. Just grab the coloured one. So I've given you 2 copies. One is the sample kit, one's the coloured one. You also will get these emailed in PDF on Wednesday as an attachment. You can print these off, use them as often as you like. So I actually use these to give to valuers, and this is how you present the information. And I also use them to do market research. So if you open it up, the property that we're looking at is number 1 Jones Street in Jonesville, which is worth $520. The current rental value is $550 a week. There's the property. You've got to put in a brief description of the property, which is distance to amenities. So if you're looking at page 1, transport, recreational facilities, parks, lifestyle areas, you can get most of this stuff on RP data. You've got to put the exact dimension of the land, frontage, rear, right side, left side, total area. Other commons could be potential subdivision. If it's a development, you've got to put the number of units in the development, number of stories in development, orientation, location, architect's name, builder. Services provided, easements and covenants. Now, most of this information you'll get when you settle the property, and the agents will have this information, and RP data will have this information. Over the page to page 2, it's a single-fronted Victorian, built in the 1920s, 110 square metres, good condition, exterior walls. You go through the whole thing, foundations, roof, downpipes, windows, floors, internal walls. Over the page to page 3, accommodation, lounge, dining room, meals area, family room, kitchen, bedroom 1, ensuite, bedroom 2, bedroom 3, bedroom 4. Over the page to page 4, study, bathroom, separate toilet, powder room, laundry, other improvements, garage, storage, fencing, location of the map, which you also print out from RP data. So you've got a very detailed information about your property, okay? And then what you do is you give the valuer comparable sales. Sale number 1, the address, the sale price, date of sale, description of the property, comparison. Now, this is where you've got to be. If you start bullshitting the valuers and trying to show them mansions that are, 7-bedroom mansions, you've got a 1-bedroom apartment, you've got to make them truly inferior, superior, or comparable, okay? So you've got to be upfront, because if you lose your credibility with the valuer, he won't pay attention to any of the information that you're giving him. So you want to become an expert in the eyes of the valuer, that you actually know what's happening in the suburb. In this example, this property is inferior. And you need to provide the agent's details as well, because the valuer is not going to take your word for it. He'll call the agent and he'll confirm whether the property is sold for that much and the date. Sale number 2, slightly superior, 550. And then sale number 3. So 3 comparable sales that are superior to your property. If you give this to the valuer and you explain to him, now valuers are liable for the valuations forever, not even after retirement, okay? So why would a valuer be scared to give you a higher valuation in the current market? Because it's going to be tested in the market, isn't it? If you say to the valuer, I'm never selling this property, it's in a trust, I'm only aiming to increase the value of my line of credit, does that not give the valuer certainty that his valuation is not being tested in the market? Absolutely. The magic words the valuers want to hear is, I'm never selling this property. I plan to increase the value every 6 to 12 months in order to refinance it, in order to get an increase in my line of credit, in order to buy more property. That gives him, now he's not going to go and risk his career for you and just give you unbelievable prices, but you want to get the upper range of the property. So that's what you do. You buy properties 10% below the median price of the suburb. You buy the most common type of property architecturally. The suburbs that you want to go for need to have historical capital growth, but there's 2 things that you want in those suburbs. Number 1, so let's just do a summary of this. Number 1, 10% below the median price. Whatever the median price is. So if you can afford 300, buy between 300 and 270. If you can afford $1 million, then you buy between around 900,000. Okay, so it's got to be 10% below. That means you've got a lot of potential comparable sales that can come on the market. Number 2, you want to target suburbs that have predominantly an age group between 30 and 39. So when you look at the bell-shaped curve, it's got to be like that. Number 3, income bands. This is bad. This is good in terms of bars on RP data. Young people, a lot of money, they're going to renovate the property. Okay, it's so, and this is what I look at when I invest in property. So it's not that I don't like this suburb, I like this suburb. It's irrelevant, really. It doesn't make a difference. The reason you invest in property is, number 1, because of leverage. Number 2, it's your ability to influence the valuation process. So you should be refinancing all your properties every 6 months. So all your loans are interest only, no exit fees. So you've got maximum flexibility. You know who the valuer is, and you're looking for comparable sales every 6 months. The moment you get a higher reference, you revalue the property, create more equity. You can capitalise interest, you can do everything. If you start buying expensive properties or cheap properties or properties that are exotic and unique, you're going to have an extremely difficult time to finding comparable sales. What you really want to do is get that panel of valuers, and you want to get an Excel spreadsheet for every lender that you're dealing with and find out who's on the panel, who are they using. Now, CBA was the most easiest company to deal with in order to influence the valuation process. Now what they've done is they've used a company called Velex, which is a third party, and they request a valuation on behalf of the bank. You have no ability to influence the valuation. They'll order a different valuation every single time, and they will not allow you to redirect valuations. Is that a good bank to deal with? So the others are still good, but for CBA, I just wouldn't recommend you can't do this particular strategy with them. They just won't allow you to do it. That's why I've stopped pushing their particular products. So this is the most powerful thing. So can you see how property now, doesn't matter that the property, if you're looking at the property price, if you know the median's 500, you're buying at 450. Is the discount so important now, whether it's 450, 440, or would you rather get the most perfect property that has the highest comparable, ability to get the highest comparables, yeah? Yeah. What if you hate the property? If you don't like the particular style and you'll never live there yourself? Doesn't make a difference, does it? So you've just taken the emotional attachment out of the equation, haven't you? Because now you're just buying for the purpose of revaluing the property. You don't care about the property itself. So this is a very powerful thing. So now the interesting thing is when you look at the median price of properties, when there's a downturn in the market, what actually happens is properties don't actually devalue. The middle of the median price actually drops. Okay, so what I mean by that is, this is very important to understand, because you're going to have articles eventually where people will say, this particular suburb lost 20%. What that means is this. Let's say you've got a hypothetical suburb and there's 5 sales. What's the median? Economic downturn. Now remember, when couples, who buys properties? It's usually couples, right? 70% of properties are owned by people. When they go to auctions and everything's going really well. What? Yeah. Couples. Not investors, I mean. They're owner occupied properties. So let's say they go to the market, everything's going really well, the economy is booming, your job is secure. Are you going to go and after you're looking at properties for 6-8 weeks and you're sick of doing research and you find a dream property, and because everything is going really well, there's 30 other bidders at auction, is it possible to overpay a little bit and stretch your budget? What if everything is doom and gloom and you still need to buy a property, but people at your job are losing their positions and there's a lot of restructuring, a lot of uncertainty? Are you going to go and stretch your budget? Is there going to be 30 people at the auction who are bidding for the same property? No. So what actually happens in the market is this. Let's say this is when the market's doing well, and then suddenly you have a situation where these are the sales. So people just buy the cheap properties. So the median price is 390. The relationship between this property and that property in terms of price point, there's a downturn, isn't it? But if you send a valuer around, the valuer will tell you, well, that property is not really comparable to this property. That property is actually that property over there, because this is a 3-bedroom plus study and this is a 4-bedroom house. So when you have your property revalued, even though the median price in the suburb could drop by 10%, your property could actually go up in value. Because it's not based on the median price, it's based on comparable sales. Because this property and that property is not comparable. It's just that economic downturn, people are buying cheaper properties. So the middle property is actually a cheaper property. Did I explain it okay? So when I see these articles about this suburb just dropped by 10%, did it really? Did every house really drop by 10%? Or is it just the middle property was sold this year was cheaper than the one previous year? So you've got to be careful with the median price way of looking at the property market. And yet the whole industry is based around the median price. The reason it's based around the median price is because most people in the industry are not investors. They're what I call just academics. They just write a bunch of articles, they analyse trends, but they don't actually have properties themselves, or they don't have that level of skill set to actually understand what they're doing. Because I've stopped looking at all this data years ago because I just couldn't do anything with it. So the only thing that I do now is just buy 6 monthly RP data reports. You don't need to drive around and talk to agents and all that research and talk to all the locals and, you know. All you got to do is sit on your, that's what I do, sit on my ass and just buy a report for $50 every 6 months and then ring up the valuer, you know. That's due diligence for me. I'm pretty lazy. You know, I've been to seminars, you got to go, you know, speak to every agent in the area. I'm getting tired just listening to this person. Do I really have to go to every agent? Okay, so that's pretty much how to influence the valuation process. Now, a couple of things. If you ring up the bank and say, can you give me your panel of valuers? They'll say no. They're not allowed to give you the panel of valuers. They've actually been trained not to do it. They're not allowed to reveal who the valuers are. It is very difficult to get valuations redirected unless you have a good relationship with the bank manager. So this is what I mean by dealing with brokers. Most brokers have no idea how to redirect a valuation. None of our brokers know how to do it. They've no idea. They've never done it themselves. I've actually helped some of the brokers do it. So this is where when you're starting off with your property and you're buying a property, just to recap some of the information, number one thing is you've got an owner-occupied property and you're buying your first investment property. Buy it through, for example, NAB. The second property, go to ANZ. Find out who the valuer is on this property and this property. Okay? Once you find the valuer, now these properties have to be around the median price of that particular suburb, purchase at 10% below the median price. Once you find out who the valuer was, you've got to have a relationship with the actual valuer. Your mortgage broker at this point in time is pretty much history. You don't need him anymore. He's done his job. He set up your first purchase and he set up your offset facility. He's out of the equation. If I was doing it again, I would have never used mortgage brokers past this point. I would actually go directly to the banks. Because now you want a relationship with your bank manager and you want to start talking to the valuer and getting a bank manager to accept the redirected valuation. And all you're doing after that is just buying 6 monthly reports, spending $50, getting high comparable sales and growing your property. Do you care what the suburb's doing as a median price? No. Do you care what the market's doing? Do you care what the state's doing? Who gives a stuff, really? The suburb could be going backwards, the state could be going backwards, but because you've purchased the right property, you could be getting high comparable sales. So the market for you changes the moment someone pays more for a similar property in the suburb. That's when your market changes. The market overall is irrelevant because you can't do anything with that information. You can't use it, you can't make money out of it. Turn to the person next to you for 30 seconds, explain and recap the main points about controlling the valuation process and the importance of buying the right property at the median price, the most common type of property architecturally. 30 seconds. Now, you've learned a lot of information today. Who feels like they're shifting their belief systems about property? Yeah? Do you see how much crap there is out there in the media? Now, it took me a long time to learn all this stuff. I'm not giving you theory here that I've read in books. This is stuff that I'm doing myself. This is how I invest. There's so much stuff out there, and I go to a lot of seminars, and there's some brilliant presenters out there, by the way. You know, last year I went to Mark Walton's seminar, which was blown away. I mean, the guy's just amazing. And I go to these seminars all the time. I always spend money on them. I just educate myself. I always learn one or two things. But there's so much information out there that is completely unusable. Like, it's good, it's impressive, but you can't apply it as an investor. And that's what I was trying to do with the 2-day, is not to give you a lot of theory. I just want to give you a lot of tools that you can go out and use and just apply, which is really what the 2-day is about. It's about giving you stuff that you can really use, and then you can go out and either choose to buy your own properties or get, even with Property Direct, and I'll talk about our service, how we can source property. But really, it's about you going out there and implementing all this stuff and actually learning the rules of the game. Because if you can learn the rules of the game, does that maximize your chance of winning? Absolutely. The sad thing is that these rules have been around for a long time. There's a lot of investors that are doing this, but there's no one really teaching it. I've never seen anyone show anyone else how to influence the valuation process, because banks won't do it for you and brokers have no idea how to do it either, because chances are they've never done it themselves. So that's one of the most powerful tools that you can learn as an investor. So your relationship with the valuer is right up there. I would say it's as important to you as your relationship with your mortgage broker or banker or solicitor or accountant. But most investors that have 1 or 2 properties don't know anything about the valuation process. No idea, and that's one of the reasons why they have one property, because they don't know how the system works and how to take advantage of it. Long-term impact of overpaying to purchase a residential investment property using Melbourne median prices between 1960 and 2008. Let's say in 1960, where the median price in Melbourne was $8,500, which is a lot of money, you got ripped off by 15% by a 2-tier marketing company. Not that they existed in 1960. And you paid $9,775. Or you got ripped off by 25%, which I don't think any company's ever done in Australia. That 25% is a big chunk, would you agree? What's the long-term implication of overpaying for property in 2008, where the median price was $449? It's $1,275 and $2,125. Is that really not important in the grand scheme of things? So you've got to look at this. The reason I put this up there is because you've got to look at where you're spending the majority of your energy and time. The majority of investors, what they do is they try to get bargains and get the cheapest possible property and spend all the time negotiating discounts or trying to get the cheapest, lowest possible interest rate. I can tell you now, those two things are virtually irrelevant in the equation. The most important thing is to get the right structure set up, the most flexibility, and buy a property that gives you the ability to refinance that property every 6 to 12 months. Overpaying, underpaying is virtually irrelevant. Now, if you can get something cheap at a discount, then get it. But it's not the most important thing. Investors without an all-encompassing and specific system can be misled by waiting for the residential property market to crash and subsequently pay high interest rates. Now, this is the other thing that happens in property. People think, I'm going to wait for the economic downturn and I'm going to buy properties really cheaply. So if you look at the property price, median prices, this is what the market does. There's a reactive high and emotional low. People say, I'm going to buy property right at the bottom of the market. Now, first thing is the data comes out 3 months later, so you'd never be able to pick the bottom of the market. But when the bottom of the market occurs, LVRs on loans go down. Serviceability criteria, which is the internal calculations that banks use to assess your ability to borrow money, go up. So even though properties actually, you could get a cheaper property, you can probably secure more assets up here in the bull market when everything is bullish and the banks are very comfortable with property than when the market's at the bottom. Having said that, what you want to do is when the market is at the bottom and you've structured yourself correctly and you've locked in your lines of credit, this is when you can negotiate a lot of discounts right at the bottom of the market. And this is where a lot of sophisticated investors pick up bargains. So at the peak of the market, which is in about 2 or 3 years, this is where I'm going to be spending the majority of my time revaluating and locking in my property prices. So when everyone's buying, I'm just sitting back watching all these people turn up to auctions and spending all my time locking in the highest possible price value of my property. When everyone's selling, that's when I go in buying. Okay, so if you lock in your property price at $600,000 and then the market drops and your property could be worth $550,000, will the bank ever ring you and tell you to reduce your line of credit facility? No. So the beauty of property is that no one knows what the value is until it's valued. That's why what you want to do is always try to value them up, spend majority of your time on valuations at the peak of the market and negotiations at the bottom of the market. Isn't that the polar opposite of what everyone else is doing? Absolutely. So you just got to be consciously aware of that. Emotional attachment to purchase or sell decision for getting to assess the bottom line. Once again, if you don't like the property, as long as it's the most common type of property architecturally around the median price, that's what you need to buy. Focus on just doing the deal for getting to conduct comprehensive due diligence and research. And I'll talk about that in a second. Believing well-meaning but are equally uninformed friends and family, salespeople, etc. Now, sometimes, number one, I often say, if your neighbour's such an expert, what is he doing living next to you? But the other thing is, if you ever see a marketing company marketing a project in the suburb, the best way to do due diligence is just go to the sales office. And usually you get these young kids in there and just say, look, what's good about the area? And they'll give you all the marketing material, especially if it's Mervac or Delphin or one of the big boys, because they sometimes spend, close to $1 million on research. And they'll give you all the infrastructure, everything that's happening in the area. So sometimes the easiest way to do research and due diligence, even if you're buying existing houses and there's an apartment development being marketed, go into the sales office because the research and marketing material they've created is phenomenal. And I do that in Melbourne. If I'm researching an area or a suburb, let's say I always look for apartment developments that are being marketed by agents or marketing companies. And the first thing I do is go to them. Because chances are they've spent thousands of dollars on marketing material in order to flog their own stock, which I'm not interested in. But I'll take the marketing material just to see what the suburb is doing. So that's one of the easiest way to actually get the information on the suburb. Focusing exclusively on obtaining the price and the interest rate for getting a long-term benefits of the right deal structure. Following the rules of a specific investment system will avoid heartache and potential losses, plus maximise the upside and rewards. Conducting extensive due diligence on every property purchase is the key. Now I'm going to show you the exact plan. And this is a summary of a plan where you can buy 10 properties over 10 years and basically retire on a consistent income of $135,000 a year tax-free. Now what I've done this with is house and land properties because The properties that I find now for clients usually average 12 to 15% capital growth per year. But when I start doing figures with those properties, they become too good. People are always skeptical. So what I've done is, I've done this with house and land that grows at 8% per year, which means they just double every 10 years. Now let me just show you how the system works. And this is really the whole system that you can retire on, because $135,000 per year consistently, tax-free, is roughly the equivalent of about 200. Would you agree? Yeah. How many people would just leave work altogether if they could generate that? Yeah. I'll show you how you can do that in 7 to 10 years. It's only based on 8% capital growth. Now, let's say in year 1, you buy a property for $450. Now, some of the mentoring clients that I have in Perth, forget about 10 properties in 10 years. I'm doing 4 properties in 1 year on average with them. And then other clients that I have, I've done 1 property and they might have to wait 2 or 3 years to get capital growth. We'll do the second property, but then in year 5, we'll probably do 2 properties. And then in year 6, we'll do another one. So it's not always going to be exactly 1 property per year, okay? It's going to be depending on what you can do and how creative you are. If you can get joint venture partners or equity partners, then you can do a lot quicker. But if you're relying on your income, at the end of the day, your limitation is purely based on how much you can borrow, the traditional way. Now, year 1, the property is worth $450. The same property in year 2, at 8% capital growth, is worth $486. $524. This is house and land properties, 4x2s, 4-bedroom, double lock-up garage, 400 square metre blocks. In year 10, the same property has nearly doubled. It's worth $899,552. Okay? Now, that's an average capital growth. 10 years means you're buying brand new estates just outside the major capital cities, whether it's Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane, but you're not going way out. You're just sticking around the perimeters and you're really doing your research. So there's good subdivisions and there's bad subdivisions. There's 3 phases to this retirement system. Number 1 is the building stage, where you're accumulating properties, you're setting up all your structures, your banking facilities, etc. Number 2 is the consolidation stage. You're reviewing each property, because some of the properties sometimes that you buy, if you haven't done your research, you might want to sell some of the properties, meaning that something adverse has happened to the area, or the area is not growing at the rate that you anticipated to grow. So you might need to sell some of the properties. Number 3 is where you're getting equity out of those properties and you're living off the equity. So I'm about to show you how you get money out of these things. It's one thing to buy them, then how do I get money out of them? Your plan will vary depending on your risk profile. Your risk profile is linked with your relationship with debt. So people go, what's my risk profile? Well, it just depends on how you deal with debt. Well, how do I know how do I deal with debt? Well, you've got $2 million in debt, you'll know how to deal with it. You can either sleep at night or you can't. So I'll show you the variations of this strategy. So year 1, you're buying a property for $450. Year 2, you're buying a property for $450. Now, obviously what I've done here is I'm not allowing for capital growth. I just want to show you the mechanics without compounding capital growth, because when I do compounding of capital growth, it becomes dollars and cents, and people get lost in the actual dollars and cents. So I can show you this example with an Excel spreadsheet where each property every year, the same property, is 8% dearer than the previous year. But I just want to show you the mechanics of how to get money out of the structure. 10 properties over 10 years. In year 11, that property goes to $900,000. Okay, doubles. If you refinance $900,000 at 80% LVR, that's $720,000 minus the original debt. How much are you left with? $270,000. So let me just show you that again. You're buying a property with $450,000. You've done your research, you know it's going to be doubling to $900,000. That could happen in year 7, could happen in year 11. It doesn't really make a difference. You start taking equity out of your property portfolio the moment the first property doubles. $900,000 at 80% is $720,000. Minus the original $450,000, you're looking at $270,000. So you've got a line of credit available for $270,000. You split that line of credit up into 2 lots of $135,000 and $135,000. Let's say your cost of funding is around 8%. Plus, you're going to capitalise interest as well. So you need to add another 2%. So what's 10% of 135,000? So 10% per year is 13,500. How many lots of 13,500 are there in 135,000? 10. So once you spend 135,000 in the first year and just blow it on your living expenses, on your cars, whatever it is, how many years would you have here to pay for that amount outstanding? Including paying for the previous year, 10. Now remember, your rental's going up at this stage as well. What happens to the property in year 11 in year 21? Goes to 1.8 million. So let's have a look at the potential for lines of credit in this. Now this is a simplified example, guys. It's not going to always be exactly one property for 450 every single year. 450, in year 11 you've got a line of credit for 270. What do you do in year 21? That 720 allows you to take out at least 150 to 160 plus capitalise the original 270. So you're continuously drawing down income from your property portfolio and living off your line of credit. Your rental at the same time is going up a lot quicker because what's happening to rental pressures in Australia? They're increasing, aren't they? Because people say, well, Konrad, surely the banks won't allow me to just draw down continuously against property. Yes, they will, up to 80%, because remember how they're assessing your serviceability. It's 30% of your wages, 80% of your rental. And you're always drawing just up to the 80% limit. So how much are you living off in the first 10 years? 135,000, tax-free. Using the other 135 to pay for the previous 135. In year 21, you've got 720, which pays for the previous year, and the new 135. Or you can take out 160. And then what do? You just keep going, and then you die. And then your life insurance pays out all your debts. And because you were smart enough to buy all your properties in bloodline trusts, your beneficiaries get all your properties unencumbered. Bastards. All that hard work, huh? So, how can you live off your investment property portfolio? Number one, if you're aggressive, you live off the line of credit. This is why I stopped trading options. I just got enough so much lines of credit now against my properties. I don't need to create income through trading. It sustained me initially, but now it's just irrelevant. So your line of credit is what you can live off. Or you can use your line of credit for trading shares. How many people saw George yesterday? Let me ask you this question. If you're doing the 10-year plan, and in year one you bought a property for $450,000, you know you're not going to get a line of credit for $135,000 into year 11. If everyone in the room gave themselves a goal to learn how to trade shares and gave themselves a 10-year timeline to do so, and you had George's mobile number and his email address, does everyone believe that in 10 years' time, with his recommendations, you could learn how to create an income of 3 to 5% per month? Yeah. So in year 11, rather than spending the line of credit, you could take out $100,000. At 3 to 5%, you're making $3,000 to $5,000 per month. In year 12, you've got another line of credit for $100,000. Now you've got $6,000 to $10,000 per month. 4 lots of properties, and you're pretty much retired on your income. Would you agree with that? So you can use number one, you can do the traditional plan, which is drawing down equity, living off the equity, and capitalising the interest. Number two, getting enough line of credit to replace your income. So your goal could be, for example, to make 200 grand a year, which you can do from year 11 onwards. Or you could sell 4 or 5 of your properties, repay the other properties, and live off the rental income. So let me show you that example. We know that in those house and land estates, the average rental is about 5%. Okay, so we're getting $380 per week on a $390,000 property. So if you want to live on $250,000 per year, you need assets, and if you're getting a 5% return, how much money do you need? About 5 mil? So what you need to do is accumulate enough property. Let's say you accumulate $12 million worth of property sell down 6 or 7 and pay out the other half. So you buy 10 properties, sell 4 or 5 and pay out the other properties, and then you're living off the rental income with no debts. Okay? Now let's say in year 11, in this example, you've got a property with 900, 900, 900, 900. This is 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, we're looking at about $4 million there, roughly, by the time they get to year 14. Okay, could be year 15. So this is a more conservative approach because you might have to wait more than 10 years to actually start living off the rental income. But it's very simple. Buy 10, sell 5 or 6, pay out the other ones, and live off the rental income, which is fully taxable income, by the way, so it's not the best strategy. You could also do a variation of both strategies. You can do share trading as well as living off the rental income. So the flexibility is there. To me, the first two are much more superior than trying to live off the rental income because this is going to take about 15 years to achieve. So none of this stuff is getting rich quick. This is getting rich slow, isn't it? There's a 10-year plan here. I think that on the properties that I'm selecting for my clients, most of them will be able to achieve this in 7 years. Because the properties that I select are much more aggressive than house and land estates. They're closer to the city, they're in better suburbs. So what would your life be like with $270,000 tax-free coming in every year for 10 years? Not that you can spend all $270, you can only spend $135. So turn to the person next to you and explain the 10-year plan and explain the line of credit and explain how you can take money out of these properties. 30 seconds. Okay, now we had a really good question, and the question was, we're going to have a break very shortly, and then we're going to go for the final section. Remember, all the secrets will be revealed at 7:58. Without those last 2 minutes, you can't do any of this. The question was, is the income taxable? No, it's not. It's a line of credit. It's debt. Now, the banks will only allow you to draw down as much as your rental allows you to service. Okay, so this is a simplified example. It's a very simple illustration. Your rental will determine how much lines of credit you can draw down because your wages are no longer servicing that debt. So sometimes it won't be 80%. Sometimes your maximum will be 65%, okay, against the property. It depends on how quickly you increase your rentals, which comes back to your property selection, and I'll talk about that as well. But the system is basically, it's predictable, it's very easy to implement. This is based on 8% capital growth, which is quite conservative, looking at house and land. 7 years goes by very quickly, doesn't it? Think of the last 10 years. Who remembers 2000 like it was yesterday? It's 2010. Imagine you were here today sitting. Now, Point Cook and all these house and land estates were selling for 180 in 2000. Imagine you were in this room today with already 8 to 9 properties behind you. Well, what's going to be different in the next 10 years? Nothing's going to be different. It's going to go by just like that. And the only thing that you'll have between now and 2020 is the difference is how many properties you can secure. My advice would be definitely to do something like Sharelord or a strategy that is passive where you don't need to rely on the rentals from these properties. The rental should be purely there to service more debt, but you shouldn't be living off the rental. If you want to live off money from your properties, you live off the line of credit or trade. Learn how to trade shares. And there's different types of trading programs. There's obviously active trading, which is E-minis with David Lachlan, where you're sitting in front of charts for 3 hours and you're taking signals and you're going in and out of trades for a few seconds. And on the other extreme, there's George, where it's ultra passive and you're placing trades every few days and you're checking what you're doing. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm 50% wrong and the market only grew at 3.5%, not 7%, which is the average, and this is based on 8%? Your 270,000 in year 11 becomes 135,000. You could still take out 67,500 and capitalise the interest for 10 years. That's about 100 grand. Now, I've never seen the market grow at 3.5% consistently for 10 years. What if I'm 75% wrong? And the market grew at 1.75%, which, by the way, is below inflation, so it's technically impossible to happen. You know, 270 becomes 67,500. Half of that is about 33,000, whatever it is, tax-free, coming in every year. Would that make a significant difference to your lifestyle? Yeah. What if I'm 87? Well, it just becomes irrelevant. It's economic meltdown. So what we're doing here is you've got a job, you invest in property, you grow equity, equity services more property, and eventually your job becomes irrelevant. So remember, your job is just now, don't quit your jobs when you leave this event. I had a client ring me saying, you know, I went to George Focus, I quit my job, I'm doing share lord, I'm trading, I'm getting consistent money. I said, well, you can't buy property for 2 years because you've quit your job, so go back to work. So make sure you max out financially before you quit your job. There's responsible advice for you. So the moment you can't get a full doc loan, that's when you quit your job, because you're a low doc borrower anyway. Okay, purchase property with no money. Who wants to learn how to do that? Everyone always thinks out for these sections. When are we going to get to the stuff we want free properties? Just giving properties away. Okay, so I'm going to show you a very quick way of purchasing property with no money. Now, there's a really good website that I recommend each and every one of you go to. Okay, so this is an independent website that has all the lenders in Australia and all the financial products in Australia that are currently available, full stop. So if you go into different loans, let's go to loans, for example, and I'll just go into loans, and we're going to go into home loans. And we're going to go into low doc home loans and reverse mortgages, but let's go into home loans. And I'm just going to show you how many lenders there are. Now remember, Plan is the biggest aggregator in Australia, meaning they have the most amount of brokers on their books, which is 3,500 brokers. And our brokers have access to 36 lenders. So to our brokers, their whole world, when they talk about the market, is 36 lenders, right? I want you to look on the left-hand side of the screen, and I want you to have an idea of how many active lenders there are currently in Australia.
Maybe more than 36. Maybe just 38.
Okay? So when people say, I've been to everyone, I go, who's everyone? I went to Bankwest and CBA and they said no. These are all the lenders. Most of them do not aggregate through brokers, meaning they don't pay commissions to brokers, meaning the brokers can't give you access to them and not aware of the products. Okay, so the best way to do research, especially if you're credit impaired, is to start ringing up some of these smaller ones. I mean, I don't know who this guy is. Look at that. Who's that? I've never heard of them, you know? Okay, so here we go. So we've got low doc loans. They're still around. Okay, now some of these don't aggregate. So once again, it's just about doing research. Now the section I want to go to is personal loans, unsecured. If you're looking at the table here, the maximum table gives you the maximum amount. Look at that, $100,000, $50,000, $80,000, etc. The easiest way to buy property with no money is this, is to get, one, a personal loan for 15%, two, a mortgage for 80%. So 90, you can do 80 to 90%. So here we've got 15 to 25% personal loan. Now, you want to go for an unsecured personal loan, and you've got to obviously qualify for the criteria. You've got to have serviceability. So if you can't borrow it yourself, you might need to go and get someone else as an equity partner or a serviceability partner, meaning that you're getting mum and dad or someone in your family to going as co-guarantor with you on the personal loan to get the property across the line. Now, this is the brilliant thing about property. And I'm going to show you how property becomes second-hand and how it's treated differently from brand new off-the-plan property. But you can see there, if you go into the, if you just scroll down, you can see that table there. That's the maximum you can borrow. Can we see a lot of 100s there? Okay, there's a lot of options there. I love no max. Is there a few options there? Please don't ring us and say, I've been to everyone. Because you haven't. Okay, so the first one, remember I spoke, who asked me the 5 questions that I ask a mortgage broker? Yeah? First question that I ask a mortgage broker is this. This is when I hire them, this is not necessarily for your research. Will lenders borrow against the valuation if it's higher than the contract price that you know of? If they say no, next, because they can. There's plenty of credit unions. Will lenders borrow against the valuation even if it's higher than the contract price? The answer is yes, they will. Not the 4 major banks, not even ING or St. George, but there's plenty of credit unions and small lenders out there that will borrow against the valuation even if it's higher than the contract price. Second question is, have you ever redirected the valuation? And if so, explain the process. Number 3 is, can you tell me what the maximum exposure the two LMI underwriters are willing to take on per investor, which is 2.5 to 3 million. So most brokers just don't know this stuff. They don't know and they won't answer the question. They won't understand how to do it. Then I ask them the difference between the servicing calculator of CBA and ANZ, which I won't get into technicalities, but they just work out serviceability completely differently. And then how many lenders are there in Australia on the market? If they say 30 or 40, well, there isn't. There's a couple of hundred actively lending money. Number 1, I'll revisit those 5 questions in a second. Get a financial pre-approval before purchasing investment property. It doesn't have to be from us, but before you buy off the plan or before you buy with no money down, you've got to go to a broker and actually understand where you are financially, where you are positioned, number 1. Number 2, use a deposit bond or a bank guarantee as a substitute for a cash deposit. This is the same as having money lent to you by a financial institution to use a deposit, no upfront money out of your pocket required. How to secure and settle an investment property off the plan for $400,000 with a 12-month settlement. So, what we're doing here is I'm going to show you a very simple transaction that we do all the time for clients and how we do it. The first thing is, you're buying an investment property off the plan. So, it's 12 months. So there's a tree, no house, tree, house, right? Timeline. It always cracks me up. It's so stupid, right? $400,000. Now, what you want to do is, the only way I know how to get discounts on properties is to buy in bulk. Now, with Property Direct, what we do with a lot of developers, like Quantum 8 Group and Imperium Design, we go in and we go, look, you've got 4 townhouses, we'll take them all off your hands, but I want a 10% discount. Now, sometimes they say, we won't give you 10%, we'll give you 7.5 or 5%. Developers normally work on a 30% margin. Builder developers, sorry, not developers. Developers do 15, but builder developers work on 30% margin. They never get it. There's always blowout costs and delays, but that's what they go in. Otherwise, they just don't do the project. So they usually require 50% pre-sales to 60%, depending on if it's apartments or townhouses, before the bank gives them money. And if I say to them, I can have your 4 properties sold very quickly within, say, a month, but I want a 5% discount or 7.5% discount, they'll just do it because they're already thinking about the next project. Their equity's locked in, the profit margin's locked in. As an individual, what you can do, the 4 of you here in the front row, if you get a pre-approval from a finance company, all 4 of you can go in and negotiate and take out a whole development from a developer. So the only way developers will talk to you directly is if you go in as a group and take out the whole project. There's no way a developer would even talk to you for 1 property. They've just got no interest dealing with you. Their time is much more valuable. They'd rather just let you deal with the agents directly. So how do you find out which developments are going up in your area? You go to the local council and you find out which projects have been registered. And then through RP data, you can actually ring up the developer directly and say, look, we want to buy the whole townhouse development off you. Do you want to talk? What are you going to say? No, stuff you. I want to stuff around with agents for 3 months. Of course they will. They'll talk to you. The key is to buy in a group or to go through someone like ourselves where we can go out and secure the whole project. The goal is to buy under market by 10%. So you're getting this property, say, for $360,000. Also, if you're buying off the plan, you want to make sure that you settle the property when the market's going up, which is right now. So anything you settle in a year or two from now is going to be worth more than today, in my opinion. So this property should be worth about $400,000. 440, sorry, in 12 months' time. You want to make sure that if you want to settle against the valuation, even though it's high, if it's higher than the contract price, write this down, the settlement has to be more than 12 months. If it's shorter than 12 months, the banks won't allow you to do it, the full major. They just won't do it. 6 months, forget about it. They're not interested. But I'll show you how to overcome that anyway. Instead of using a cash deposit, what you use is you're using a deposit bond or a bank guarantee. Now, how many people have never heard of bank guarantees or deposit bonds? Okay, let me explain how they work. When you secure a property from a developer, let's say it's $400,000 and you need a 10% deposit, that money that you pay to the real estate agent gives that to the vendor's solicitor. And that money goes into the solicitor's trust account. The developer can't access that money until settlement. But it's there in case you default on your contract. You can access that money if you don't settle the property, okay? So developers don't really need cash, but they need security from you in the event that you don't settle. So imagine a bank came to a developer, National Bank, and they said, look, here's a check from the NAB. You can't cash it in now, but you can cash it in 12 months from now. Is that fairly secure for a developer? Is NAB going to renege on that? No. That's what a deposit bond is and a bank guarantee. Bank guarantees are issued by banks, and they're a promissory note to pay the deposit to the developer on a particular future date in time. They're issued by the major four. You need a 1-to-1 security ratio, so you need to have the same amount of equity in the property somewhere, but it doesn't have to be your property. It can be your parents' or friends' property. You pay for it every 6 months, and it costs you 1.6% off the value of the property. So if you're looking at a $40,000 bank guarantee, it's going to cost you $640 for 6 months. The 4 banks that do that is NAB, CBA, ANZ, Westpac. Okay? So you can ring them up and just get a bank guarantee, you get a brochure, you can find out how it works. But it's a substitute for your cash deposit. Okay? So it's better to pay $1,280 per year than to pay that 40 grand locked up for 12 months. Would you agree with that? In terms of opportunity costs. Deposit bonds are issued by insurance companies, and there's only one insurance company now that's really left in the market. It's called Deposit Power. So once again, if we just go to the website, depositpower.com.au, you can go online, you can do the application online. You can also use our mortgage brokers, or you can just go straight to them directly. There's the website, there's the phone number, give them a call, get a free brochure. Okay? Now, there used to be a lot of companies on the market, but because of the cowboys that existed in the industry in the early 2000s, what they were doing is people were securing properties in Melbourne and Sydney with no intention to ever settle them and no financial ability to ever settle them. They were putting bank guarantees and deposit bonds down with no financials, hoping to sell the property prior to settlement. The market turned. They lost their money, the insurance companies got called by the developers, and they went under. Okay, so now we've only got Deposit Power that's left. It's secure, it's unsecured, so you don't need equity, but you need a 5-to-1 security ratio, but that can be assets, it can be contents insurance. Now, who establishes the value of contents insurance? Won't say anymore. It can be superannuation, it can be cars, it can be boats. So contents insurance, think about it. Upfront fee, 2.5% to 4%. You can have them up to 3 years, 36 months. So they're very good for off the plan. Now, for more information about these, just go either to the banks or Deposit Power and just get educated. I'm just telling you where to go to get more information. So, buy an investment property at wholesale price, 5 to 20 below market. The easiest way to do is go to the developer directly. If you don't know developers, get 4 of you and ring me and I'll give you the developer. It's that simple. I'll tell you, just ring this guy. If you got the 4 of you pre-approved, he'll give you 10% off now. I know developers that will do it in Melbourne, no problems. Target private treaty sales, not auctions. You can also do it with private developers, but you can't do anything at auctions, okay? So at auctions, you cannot negotiate discounts, obviously. Perform extreme market research and due diligence. Now, let me just show you how the transaction works. You're securing the property for $400,000. You went in a group and you got a discount of 10%. Now, sometimes you can't get a discount. Let's say it's just $400,000. Okay, so the developer says, you know what, I'm not going to give you any discount. The property 12 months later is worth $440,000. You tried to create a gap and get it for $360,000, but you couldn't do it. The property is worth $440,000. Because it's more than 12 months settlement, which is a medium-sized development, like we've got a lot of developers at the moment that took 18 months to settle. Okay, that property is now worth $440,000. Now, what you can do is you can borrow 90% against $440,000. Which is $396,000. So you've got that from the bank, plus you need another $4,000 for the property, and you need another, say, for a property like that, $25,000 to complete the transaction. So you need another $30,000, don't you? Where do you get that money from? You get an unsecured personal loan. Now, let me just show you how this works, because the personal loans are usually principal and interest for 5 years. The moment you settle the property, this is the beautiful thing. Let's say this is Monday, Tuesday. Let's say your settlement's on Monday, and you settle the property for $400,000. Because you've got an interest-only loan with no exit fees, you can take that property on Tuesday. Let's say this is ANZ. You can go to NAB on Tuesday and refinance the property. When you ring up NAB and you say, listen, and let's say that property over time is worth now $440,000. When you ring up NAB and say, I want to refinance my property, they say, okay, great, we're going to send the value around. Will they ask you, have you got the contract of sale? Yeah. No, the contract of sale is irrelevant. The property's second-hand. On Monday, it's settled. On Tuesday, it's second-hand property. How does the bank establish the value of the property now? They send the value around. So write this down. The contract of sale is only relevant on the day of settlement. The next day, it's not worth anything. It's irrelevant. No one cares what you settled it for. Now you have to establish the value of the property. Let's say you can't get a personal loan. You can even go to solicitors, funding, or private equity funds. So you can ring up solicitors in your major capital city and get short-term finance. Now, they'll charge you 20% for that. But let me put it into perspective. Let's go for a worst case scenario here, and I'll show you how easy it is to buy property with no money. I'll come back to this example. Let's say you've secured the property for $400,000. You can't get a discount. You know it's worth $440,000, but the bank said there's no way we're going to lend you money against the 400. We know it's worth 440, but we're still going to lend you 400. So, and we're going to lend you 80%. So, if you're looking at 80%, you're looking at $320. So you've got a gap of $80,000 plus $25,000. So you've got a gap there of $105,000. Now you can get that $105,000 by borrowing private equity funds or solicitors funding. They'll charge you 20%. Now people go, my God, 20%, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? What's 20% of $105,000? That's $21,000 divided by 12 months. It's $1,750 per month. Is that tax deductible for you? Absolutely. So go back to this slide. On Monday, you take out a loan for $320,000 plus 105 via solicitors funding. You go to NAB, and NAB takes, dragging their feet, 3 months to refinance your property. 3 horrible months of waiting. What's your cost? 3 times 1,750, because that's how much interest you're paying per month, equals $5,250. Now they'll take the new valuation. They'll give you money against the valuation, which is 440. So now, for example, 440 times 0.9%, 396. So now you can get a personal loan and pay out your solicitor's funding. And then after 12 months, what do? Refinance, pay out the personal loan. Even at 20%, 525 for 3 months, tax deductible, how much is it really going to cost you? Virtually nothing. Now that's the worst case scenario. So remember, you can get a combination of personal loan and mortgage. The best case scenario is this. The best case scenario is the 4 of you go to a developer and you get the properties at $360,000. Okay? They're worth $400,000. When you settle, they're worth $440,000. The banks lend you 90% against 440, which is 396. That 396 not only covers your 360, but it covers all your stamp duty. Now that's what you're aiming for every time. Okay, that's how you buy property with no money. If it doesn't work, you've got 2 other options: unsecured personal loans, and if you can knock back on those, you go to solicitor's funding. My first option would be always unsecured personal loans. Now, sometimes when I talk about this, people have a perception that this is somehow dodgy or unusual. I can just tell you now that with banks, and this is only recently they've taken this off, but Bankwest, St. George and ING actually had a product which was a combination of, it was 100%, 105% finance, and it was a combination of personal loan and a mortgage. And then you had the right to pay out the personal loan at any time, the moment you have enough equity in the property. So that's the easiest way to actually buy property with no money down. Turn to the person next to you just for 30 seconds, explain how to do this with no money down. Okay, let's continue on. Now, there's variations of this, but effectively what you're doing, there's 3 steps to this. Number 1, you're using a bank guarantee or a deposit bond as a substitute for your deposit. Number 2, you're looking for properties with a 12-month plus settlement. You're also looking for properties in the market that's going up. It's an upward trending market. So this is number 1, this is number 2. Number 3, you're looking for a lender who will settle the property against the valuation, not the contract price, even though it's higher. And if it's more than 12 months, most lenders, except the major 4, will agree to do so. Worst case scenario, if they don't do so, you settle the property with a combination of personal loan, solicitor's funding, with an interest-only loan with no exit fees, and the moment you settle, the next day you start refinancing with another lender, because you've got a high valuation, haven't you? And the biggest mistake that people make is they go for a cheap product that has exit fees of 3.5–4%, and then they're stuck because on 500 at 4% or 400, that's 16 to 20 grand in exit fees. So that's why I just go for interest only, no exit fees. There's hundreds of products on the market that will give you that ability and that flexibility. Now, I just want to show you very quickly due diligence in terms of the PIA software. And I'm just going to do research. I'm going to take a property. I'm going to show you how quickly it is where you can work out your situation and you can work out the cash flow analysis of an investment property. So in this example, I want to pick someone from the audience who's got a... now, you can make these statistics up. I'm not going to get you to, but who's got a roughly 1 property? They've got an owner-occupied property. They've got a bit of equity. They've at least got 100 grand worth of equity, and they're on around about 60 grand. Anyone who wants to be a guinea pig? No one? Okay. Let me just show you the PIA software without actually picking on anyone in the audience. Okay, so let me just show you how quickly you can do research on a property, and I'm going to choose the townhouse that I showed you the valuation on before. We've got a townhouse with $620,000. We've got rental of $480 a week. It's in Newport, Melbourne, and we're looking at a couple, and I'm going to show you a couple of scenarios. Now, can someone, who's got to stop watching the audience? Yep, the gentleman over there. Can you time me from now? And I'll show you how quickly it takes to do research and due diligence. So the first thing that we do is we put the property details in there. So I'm going to put the address in, and the address of this property is Unit 1 of 28, Thorpe Street, Newport. In terms of the property itself, it's a 3-bedroom. Now you can put the photo of the property in there if you like. You can put additional comments. The second thing is I'm going to put in the property value. The property value is $620,000, and it's a brand new property. And the interesting thing is the stamp duty varies from state to state. In this example, I've got Victoria, and in Victoria, if this property was established, the stamp duty is $32,270. If we go to Queensland, for example, the same property, the stamp duty would be $20,925. That's 12 grand difference. If we go through New South Wales, you can see that the formulas and the way they're worked out. In New South Wales, it's $23,000. Victoria's got the highest stamp duty in Australia. If you look at WA, $23,000. So we go back there and we'll go to Victoria. Now, that calculates the stamp duty on the entire investment. Because the land component's only worth $230,000, we're going to go back and we're going to work out what the stamp duty is on $230,000. And in this instance, I'll just put in $14,500 because that's what the actual stamp duty is worth. And we're going to override that. The rental income on this property is $480 per week. We're also going to allow 2% vacancy rate for this particular property. So the rental yield, the gross yield is 3.95. The rental expenses will be agent's commission, which is 7.7%, plus the body corporate, which is $1,450 per year, and the mowing will be, say, $200 per year. Depreciation of the building. The building itself is worth approximately $480,000. Or we'll just put $450 to be conservative. That's at 2.5%. And depreciation of the fittings, $18,600 sounds right, but we'll put in, just to be conservative, $16,000. And obviously, by getting a depreciation schedule, I would put in all the information here from the depreciation schedule. And I want to link that back to the property price. Then we look at finance, the loan amount. In this example, let's say we're going for a loan of 90%. So we're looking at a loan of $558,000. And we've got purchasing costs there of $15,950. The loan type is 6% interest only. Let's put that up to 7%. And the loan costs, I usually allow about $5-6 grand, especially if I'm settling in a trust. Then we've got the investors. You can put in all your details in there. And let's say we've got investors with $55,000 each. And the principal residence, you can put in the value of the house. Let's say the house is doing 8% capital growth. And we're looking at the principal residence as $500,000. And in terms of the amount outstanding, let's say it's $140,000. The loan repayments, we'll just go into the loan repayment calculator, and we'll just say that the loan repayments are over 30 years, interest only, at say 8%. Living expenses, bank default $30,950. And if you have additional properties, you can add them here, but this is the first investment property, and we're going to put it into joint names. And then we go into the what if section. We're looking at inflation at around 4%, and the rental expenses about 6%, capital growth around 10%. And then we look at the spreadsheet. This particular property would cost that person $174 per week, which is not a good situation, and I probably would recommend that property to that particular person. Can you stop the timing there?
5 minutes flat.
5 minutes flat. This is the summary that this software produces. So you can see there, you've got a very good summary of the property. You've got the purchase cost, the value, the loan cost, the contributions, the loan details, the rental, the cash deductions, pre-tax cash flow. It's fairly detailed information. The biggest thing about this is that if I look at the cash flow scenario of this property, I can see that this property will be cash flow positive in year 15 by $467 based on this scenario. The equity component is the most important section. In year 4, I've got 350 grand in equity, which means I can start buying more property. Now that property is probably not a good investment for someone that's on $55,000. If we go back to the investors, now the thing you can do here is you can also do income and living expenses. So you can do complete budgets here. You can actually go and do a complete budget for yourself in terms of your real expenditure. So $30,950 is just the average banking default for a couple. But you can do a concise budget for yourself, including even little things like movie tickets and whatever you're spending per month. Okay. Now the reports that it generates are quite detailed reports. You get a 40-year analysis here as well. And it gives you, just very visually, gives you a lot of summaries. And I'll just show you one report, which is basically the report over here where it gives you a breakdown of how much you're paying, the taxman and a tenant. Okay, so that's not a good property for a person that's on $55,000.
Why?
If you're just paying too much a week, it's $174 a week. Now, if we just go back there for a second, if we go to the investor and we increase their income, and let's say you've got one person that's making $90,000, and in terms of the ownership, we just put it into the single name of the person. That's 155. So it's still not doing a lot of difference in terms of affordability. What I try to do with properties for clients is to have them spend around $30 to $50 per week on the property. So let me show you another property. And this is a townhouse in Brooklyn, for example. And this property is worth $450, $450,000, I should say. The stamp duty on this property in Victoria was $11,800. The rental income for this property is $400 per week. The rental expenses are exactly the same, except there's no body corporate because these townhouses are on separate titles. So there's no common grounds for this particular property. In terms of the building depreciation, the building itself is $250,000. And depreciation of fittings, $12,500. So in this example, this property is $111 per week. Now, if you increase the income of the actual investor, so if we go in, and this is where you can, it actually makes a difference whether you're putting it into an individual name. So if we go there, we're splitting the income here. Here's $122,000. And let's say if you go into the investor details and you've got a person here on 110,
That's 11,000.
So it's about 62 bucks. So what this software allows you to do is to play around with figures, and the amount of variables that I've put in there is fairly accurate. So the worst thing you can do when you're going and researching property is go to a real estate agency and go, okay, the rental's 400, it costs 400,000, it's 7%, so roughly it's this amount. I mean, how many variables did I put in 5 minutes? Is that fairly detailed analysis? Absolutely. The goal is to make this property around 50 bucks a week. That's roughly what I look at when I look at matching people with properties. Because at 50 bucks a week, which is times 52 weeks, about $2,500 a year, that's fairly affordable, especially if you can take that money out of a line of credit. Now, if you look at this report, and this is when you're going for loans, you should always have these reports, and this is how you present the information to the banks, because banks are very impressed with this information. If you look at this scenario here, this property in Brooklyn, for example, in Melbourne, you can see there your tax credits, you can see the cash flow situation. So this property is not going to be... Now, these are very conservative figures. We're talking about 4% rental increases because it's just that inflation. The reality is this property is going to be cash flow positive roughly in year 8 or 9. In terms of the equity component, you can see there in year 3 or 4, we've got enough equity there to buy another investment property. Now, this software generates a lot of different reports. In fact, I've been using this software for over 10 years. I still don't understand all the reports that it generates. But I give it to the bank anyway. The biggest thing is it's just a visual tool for you to conduct research and due diligence. You want to make sure when you're looking at this software, and can we give out the forms as well for the PIA software to everyone? I've actually contacted Jan Summers and Ian Summers, the creator of this software, and I've negotiated a discount on buying this compared to what you can get it online. So, and the saving's not great, and for those who are interested in buying this, there's 2 versions of it. There's a basic personal version, which I think is about $270, and there's a pro version, which is about $450. The beauty of this software is, number one, it's linked to the State Revenue Office. So the stamp duty always gets upgraded every year if there is a change, automatically. So it's upgraded for life. The other thing is it's linked to the ATO tax calculator. So the calculations on your tax is always 100% accurate. Okay? So if you want to do research and due diligence, what I'd recommend when you look at the breakdown of these properties, you want to make sure that you're putting in the least amount of money into the deal. Your tenant and your taxman should be paying for majority of your expenses. Okay, 10% is cool. That's about 60 bucks a week. You want to get it down to as much as possible. In fact, with most clients, I try to get them only to put in about 5% of the actual costs. This is how we match property to the client based on their income and their tax. And this is a very, very good way of doing analysis. Now, I could spend a whole day just on this software, teaching you all different tricks and how to do different ways of looking at property. I'll take questions in a second, but what I recommend you to do is just, if you're serious about property investing, this is just a must to have. Where you can buy it through us, so you can go directly to the website. You can fax those forms through, and we can definitely get you that software. If you've got a couple of you can definitely just get one package for a couple. You get the license. One person gets the license. The other person can also download and use that information. Now, let's have a look at something very interesting. If you go into that scenario, what if we were to change the finance? Now remember, if we look at the spreadsheet of this particular property, it's $62 a week, isn't it? Okay. Now, let's say we go into the calculator, and in terms of the finance section, all we do is we change it from interest only to principal and interest. $174. Is that a big difference? How unaffordable is that at principal and interest? And in year 10, you're still paying, I mean, it's just ridiculously high, isn't it? So in terms of your cost, there's no point doing principal and interest loans on investment properties because only the interest-only component is tax deductible for you. So doing research and due diligence, and I would say on average it takes 7.5 minutes to do research. So what I mean by that is you need to have a laptop preloaded with that software when you're out in the market. And you could pre-program most of your variables in that software. So all you need to do is when you're looking at property is you need the rental, the price, the stamp duty, body corporate, property management fees. That's it. Based on those things, you can do very detailed cash flow analysis. The final section that we're going to do today is commandment number 4, which is extreme due diligence and market research. Now, we're going to finish off and I'm going to go talk a little bit about property direct services, and we're going to, as I said, all the secrets will be revealed at 7:58. I'm actually going to finish a little bit earlier today because I haven't got enough contents to go to 8 o'clock, so I'm going to finish around 7:30, okay? So I'm just going to cover a couple of quick things about how to get started in property. Like, what do you do now on Monday? What do you research? Where do you go? You've got to understand that the number one thing is, I personally think that Brisbane and really Queensland has the highest population growth out of any major capital city. I invest in Melbourne because I live there. If I lived in Queensland, I'll be investing in Queensland. It doesn't make a difference where you live. Invest wherever you're comfortable with investing, as long as you're investing. If you're looking at population growth, have a look at Brisbane. In 2007, 1.8 million. 2056, 3.9. There's going to be another 2 million people coming into Brisbane. Where are they going to be living? That's an average of 1.6% annual growth in terms of population. Australia is growing by 1.2% in major capital cities. If you're looking at Queensland, you've got a population now of just over 4 million. That population is going to double to 8.6. There's another 4.5 million people coming in from now into 2056. Do you think that's going to put a lot of rental pressures on housing? So if you look at Victoria, we're growing at 1%, you guys are growing at 1.5%. So you've got more population growth here than any other major capital city. The underlying demand for new housing is an estimate of the new number of dwellings that would be needed based on past growth in population, migration, both long-term arrivals and short-term visitors, living standards, and demolition of existing housing. This is the reason why the housing industry, and this is what everyone talks about, this is the actual demand for housing and this is the actual completion. That gap there is the reason that we have such increases in capital growth. Our industry isn't designed to cater for this many properties. We just don't have the facilities to grow the market this quickly. So what's going to happen is the major capital cities are going to get more and more expensive. Full stop. So the key is get a sense of purpose and develop the clear investment strategy. What I mean by that is you've got to arrive at a figure per month that you want to live off. Could be 10,000, 20,000, and then you've got to basically work back and translate that back into property acquisition. That's what you've got to do as a number one step. So it could be 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. Could be 5,000, could be 3,000. The lower the figure, the quicker you achieve it, basically. Understand different types of investment properties available in the market in terms of capital growth, rental yield, tax benefits and finance. Conduct macro-level market research and try to predict market hotspots. One of the easiest things to do is just go to hotspotting.com.au. I'll show you the websites now you need to be aware of. And this website actually gives you hotspots all around Australia, especially in Queensland. Up and coming areas that are going to grow. You can buy a list of 10 hottest growth suburbs in Queensland for like $100. Why wouldn't you buy it? Pick the top 3 and just go for it. Residex.com.au also produces newsletters and gives you an insight of the fastest growing suburbs in Australia, in Queensland as well. Midwood.com.au, it's also an independent body that gives you reports about Queensland and where all the capital growth is occurring. The Australian Property Investor magazine. If you're going to read one magazine about property, I definitely recommend you read the Australian Property Investor magazine. I've actually got every single edition since the first one that was released in '98, and I've kept every single edition. I used to bring the first edition to the events to show people. That's a very good resource for reading about property. And if you can order some back issues, I would definitely recommend you do so, just to give an idea of what property was worth 10 years ago. HerringToddWhite.com.au. They also release a monthly newsletter talking about the property market and the state of the market. And they're independent. Now, can we give out the brochure on the housing industry, released by QBE? Great, you've got it already. So this gives you the outlook as well in terms of the housing industry. This is just a gift from us, just for you to give you an idea of where the market's heading. between 2010 and 2012. Bit of reading for you there. The Real Estate Institute of Australia.com.au gives you a lot of information about the state of the industry. Conduct research on major infrastructure and industrial developments in your chosen major capital city. Let me ask you this, is it important to know where highways are being built and train stations around Australia? Infrastructure.gov.au gives you a summary of all the highways, all the transport, all the infrastructure that's being developed. Is it important to know where Westfield is going to be building their future shopping centres? And is it important to buy houses before they build them there? Absolutely. In fact, in Melbourne, we've got access to 26 house and land estates, but I only recommend 3 of them. Point Cook, South Morang and Limbrook Estate. The reason I recommend them is because they're getting a train station built there and Westfield Shopping Centre is going in there as well. So I think that will put those 3 estates potentially on the growth path that's higher than the 6 to 8% that typical house and land estates experience. Local council infrastructure reports. If you go to this website, you can get access to every locality in Australia by suburb or by local council. So if the local councils are investing in anything, it'll be on that website. You know you're getting this emailed on Wednesday, right? myrpdata.com.au. RP data is where you buy your free suburb reports and you buy your detailed suburb reports as well. The free reports are basically summaries of the suburb demographically, etc. So the Australian Property Monitors, and also subscribe for newsletters. Realestate.com is quite good, obviously, Domain, etc. Real estate sales, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, etc. Definitely buy yourself a copy of the PIA software. You can go to this website, which is summersoft.com.au, and just request a copy. Get a few of you together, share the license. Not that I said that. Learn to crunch the numbers and conduct cash flow analysis on your potential investment property. Remember, your goal as an investor is to buy 3 properties, get rid of all your tax, and have the money every week to pay for the shortfall. Conduct on-the-ground due diligence of your chosen suburb. Attend auctions open for inspections in your chosen area. Establish a relationship with the local agents and identify key growth areas and lifestyle areas in your suburb. So what you want to do is every suburb has a street that is better than all the other streets. It could be because there's coffee shops there or restaurants, or it's just a nice looking street. My advice is to get as close as you can, if not in the actual street, and buy property there. You want to make sure that your properties outperform the rest of the suburb. The easiest way to find that out is just to speak to the valuer. He'll tell you which street consistently outperforms the rest of the suburb and why. Speak to the locals, visit the local council, find out what developments are coming up. It's all there. Conduct micro-level due diligence on the property and the contract of sale. Make sure you have a property solicitor. We don't use conveyancers under any circumstances, okay? We always use property solicitors in every major capital city. Solicitors can give you legal advice, conveyancers can't. So we just don't recommend to use conveyancers. Not that there's anything wrong with them, it's just that you want to make sure you get that extra level of service. Speak to a valuer who specialises in valuing properties in the area. And that's pretty much it for micro-level due diligence. Now, very quickly, just before we go, I just want to cover the 21st Century Property Direct membership, and I'll be finished for the day. So I just want to tell you what we do as a company and why we do what we do. Basically, we run these workshops all the time, and I recommend that you attend these workshops as many times as you can. I vary the contents all the time. I don't do the same workshop over and over. So I expand on different areas and I shorten different areas. Last time I did one in Brisbane, I spent a lot more time on the size and shape of properties and etc. Now I've done a lot more time on the valuation process. There's only so much I can cover in 2 days. But I hope you guys got value out of what you've seen, yes? Who feels they've learned a little bit about property? Yeah? It's good value for no money, isn't it? Now, the 21st Century Property Direct membership is basically consists of us helping you to fast-track your wealth plan. Some of you will go out and buy property from the open market, which is phenomenal, and that's what we recommend to everyone. Some of you won't have time, or you just don't know how to get started. If you want us to help you with your first purchase, we can do so, okay? But it'll just be the first one. Now, Some of you will want us to do the whole 10, which we are doing as well through private mentoring clients. But what we want to do with Property Direct is we want to give you at least one property so you can get started, and you, not only do you get the property, you get the team of experts around you. So you get the experience of having interacted with a valuer, with a broker, with a solicitor, with an accountant. That in itself is very valuable. So we give you access to 21st century accounting, 21st century finance, 21st century property direct, 21st century insurance. The other services like solicitors, BMT, and all the other add-ons, we outsource from the open market. So in every major capital city, we have a preferred solicitor. We've got nothing to do with them, but we just don't want to open up 21st century legal in every major capital city. It's just not worth us doing so. But we have preferred specialists that work and look after our clients in every major capital city. The main services we do in-house because we have control over them. By becoming a 21st Century Property Direct member, you'll be coached and mentored by successful property investors who have real measurable results. So it's Nigel Kibble, myself, and Craig Webb. Based on the personalised wealth plan, you gain access to blue chip investment properties sourced from the open market by our panel of experts. Duncan Hall, Nigel Kibble, and myself shortlist all the properties that we offer to our clients. We do research on them. We go through a 52-point criteria. We reject about 85% of all properties that come across our table. We get developers calling us all the time with stock, and I would say I reject 7 to 8 out of 10 properties. So the question I always ask myself is, would I personally invest in that property? If the answer is yes, then I recommend it. If it's not, then just throw it back. You also get a personalised PA plan. So you get a report, 22-page report based on you filling out information on the financial fact finder. Okay, so you get that information as well. So we work with you very closely. We'll give you an idea of, look, these are the types of properties you should be targeting based on your income and your tax. Okay, so that's what we do with the Property Direct membership. Currently, we've got properties of up to $50,000 below valuation from Hare & Todd White. In Adelaide, we've got properties at $100,000 below the market. Okay, now that's very difficult to do. So sometimes people go, oh, look, you know, we only want the properties that are discounted. We can't get them all the time. They do go very quickly. We have new projects coming up all the time, but it's hard to get those below valuation projects, especially in the current market. 12 months ago it was easy, relatively easy. Now it's getting harder and harder because the market's recovered and developers know that they can sell these properties through the open market through regular agents. 21st Century Property Direct has new developments available every 2 or 3 weeks. Once we get the development, we've already got clients waiting, pre-approved, and we match the project to the clients. So once we work out, okay, the best property for yourself is a townhouse worth about 500, because based on your income, it's going to cost you $50 a week. The moment that townhouse arrives, we're already ringing and say, look, we've got the property, here's the report, and we send you out a due diligence report on the property. And then you can make up your own mind and you've got time to think about whether it's something that you want to get involved with or you don't want to get involved with. It's that simple. So we just basically find properties, we shortlist them, and we offer you those properties. We've got house and land packages, townhouse and apartment developments in all the major capital cities. But we specialise predominantly in Adelaide, Melbourne and Brisbane. Sydney we've been avoiding a little bit because of the capital growth history for the last 4 years. If you don't know what's happening in Sydney, a lot of suburbs just going backwards and sideways. I've got clients that have bought properties 4 years ago and they're worth exactly the same amount today, with the exception of the last few months where the market's kind of recovered. We specialise in sourcing residential property based on strong fundamentals. We only look at the major capital cities. It's not that we don't believe in regional centres or outer areas, we just don't want to take risk with our clients, okay? So this is like a no-brainer property that we offer. Okay, you can make money anywhere, but because we've got so many clients at the academy, we want to make sure if we recommend something to you, you've got virtually no chance of losing your money on that property, because it's going to be in the major capital city in a proven suburb with proven capital growth. We offer asset protection advice, insurance advice, legal and conveyancing advice. We help you to obtain 100% finance, and we can help you getting a deposit bond through Deposit Power as well. The service that we provide, and we've got properties currently, I'll just give you a range. We've got house and land in Melbourne. all the time coming up. Melbourne apartments, townhouses, Queensland house and land, Brisbane townhouses. This stock comes and goes as we have clients coming on board all the time. We're doing a lot of events, so it's hard for me to tell you how much stock we have available at any one time. It just keeps coming and going, basically. We give you two things that are different about our company. Number one, we physically give you a current valuation from a bank panel value on every property that we shortlist. Okay, so you get a bank valuation, you know what the property is valued at. You also get a current written rental appraisal from the local agent or from 21st Century Property Management, depending on the state. So you know what the rental appraisal is, you know what the valuation is. There's a complete level of transparency there. Would you agree? So we actually give you those two pieces of information, and the valuers that we use are the most reputable valuers. So we're talking about Charter Kirk Kramer, WBP, Heron Todd White. Okay, so you know automatically, there's the actual rental appraisal, there's the valuation on the property. If we do give you a discount, it's a discount below the valuation. Okay, so you know that this is the bank valuation, this is what you're getting the property for. That's not always available, by the way. It's only in selected projects. Now, let me just show you of a good house and land estate in Melbourne. I can spend 2 days on all the estates that we have, but I just want to show you one house and land estate that I think it's good, and I'll show you why it's good. It's 20 kilometres from the city. It's in Point Cook in Melbourne. It's getting a lot of the redevelopment. So this is what it's going to look like. So there's an area, it's an area that's close to the water. Who believes that if you can buy a property near the water, it's going to do better than property inland? Yeah, absolutely. Historically, we just know Australians love the water. So this is a house and land that we deal with in Melbourne. We've got 26 house and land estates like this all around Melbourne, but this is one of my favourite ones, just because of what's happening there and redevelopment in that area. That's what it's going to look like, okay? So you've got a lot of waterfront properties. You've got, there's going to be a lot of money going in there over the next 10 years. In terms of capital growth, I still quote 8%, okay? And that's all I want to do the cash flow analysis on. It will just double every 10 to 12 years. Even despite the fact that we think it's going to be a little bit better than that. When I choose blocks, I usually choose blocks across the road from parks or in the best parts of the subdivision. Do you think that's important?
Yes.
Yeah. The blocks that I like to choose are about 500 square metre blocks. That's a good sized block. For Melbourne, that's great. For Queensland, it's actually small. You know, here I would choose 750, 800, 1100, right? For Melbourne, you don't need that much land. The properties that we do choose tend to be the larger properties. This is the kind of property that I don't like recommending, where it's a fairly tight little property where you've got a corridor there, you've got a couple of rooms there. What I like recommending is properties that have at least 4 bedrooms plus an open plan living area plus alfresco area. Okay, imagine there's 100 of these properties on the rental market at the same time, but only 20 of them have alfresco areas. These are under roof outside areas. They're the first ones to get rented, because it always bloody rains in Melbourne. So if you want to have a barbecue, you're probably going to be in the rain underneath a covered area. Right? That little fresco area will give you premium rental for those areas. So they're the kind of properties that we target, and we kind of choose properties around 20 squares to 25 squares, depending on the estate. There's some of the estates that we have. Bringback Garden Estate is actually 9 k's from the city. It's the closest house and land estate that you can get to in any major capital city. So 9 k's is very close. Would you agree with that? It's the closest you can get to the city. So these are some of the estates. That's the one that I just covered before in Point Cook. They're the other ones that we have access to in Melbourne. And they're all different parts of Melbourne, basically. Townhouses. Let's look at Adelaide. I'm just picking developers randomly. Newport Keys, Port Adelaide, I think it's going to be great. It's a $2 billion project, 10 years on the waterfront. Once again, there's apartments and absolute waterfront villas. Okay, I'll show you some examples of properties. These are the villas that I really like myself. I think they do extremely well. In Melbourne, these properties would sell for 1.5 million. If you want to look at properties in Port Melbourne, they're virtually the same size, selling for 3 times the amount. Not that there's a comparison between Port Melbourne and Port Adelaide. They're 3-bedroom, double garage, and a boat garage. Okay, this is one of the properties, for example. I'll just show you what the property looks like. There's the property itself. There's the internals. You can get these fully furnished. And because there's the Olympic Dam is being established now in Adelaide, which is the biggest open mine in the world, BHP is going to be sending a lot of executives to the area, and there's really nothing new in Adelaide. If you've been to Adelaide, there's nothing being built. It's just all suburbia. So whether you think these people will be renting, that this is where they want to live. So the thing is, you can get these properties and you can offer them for corporate leases if you're smart. There's only a limited amount of these properties. Nice views, you can see the river there. That's what they look like. They're 579,900, and 12 months ago they were selling for 679,900. So it's 100,000 below market, which I think is a great bargain. This is a development in Melbourne. Now, as of last week, the last one was reserved, but it's not confirmed yet. I just want to show you what a good townhouse looks like in Melbourne and Sydney. The master bedroom on the ground floor. Why is that important? Who doesn't like climbing stairs? That's now downsizing. The baby boomers, right? They want the master bedroom on the ground floor. Al fresco area. Upstairs, two bedrooms or a study. Location-wise, this is the kind of properties that I love. There's the beach, there's the property, there's the train station, there's the main strip of restaurants and coffee shops. Train station takes you directly to the city, and you're in proximity of walking distance to 3 schools. It's 7 k's from the city. Is that a good property in Melbourne? Yeah. Absolutely. So it ticks all the criteria, it ticks all the boxes. This is a property we had in Adelaide in Brompton, which is 4 k's from the city north of Adelaide. These are now sold as well. In this example, I'm showing you this example because we actually had them at a discount of about 25,000 below valuation. So with these properties, whoever secured these properties, and they had automatically created 25,000 in capital growth. Now North Adelaide, which is the best part of Adelaide, has now done exceedingly well. So there's more capital growth on these properties, and they're off the plan getting built now. Apartments. This is in Aspendale in Melbourne, 26 k's from the city. It's on the beach. It's on the beach side of the highway. That's the actual photo of the beach. And this is walking distance from the apartment. It's one of the best beaches in Melbourne. That's the photo from the second floor overlooking the beach. Is that a fairly good view? It's not Queensland, guys, it's Melbourne. I know our beaches are crappy, but this is the best we can do, all right? We're trying. This is in the city, Ascot Vale Apartments, 495 to 525, 4 k's from the city, in the best part of the city. So these are the kind of properties that we source, 2 bedrooms plus a study, open plan. The property membership is basically based on you and all the experts working around you. Can we give out the forms on the Property Direct membership? The membership is free. We used to charge $5,995 for non-members and $3,850 for home study members. But if you want access to these properties, we are giving this membership away for free. Now, people often ask me, well, what's the catch with the membership? Why is it free? We do it out of the goodness of our hearts. At the end of the day, I'm an agent representative, same with Nigel. Everything that we do, that you do with us, we make money out of. Okay, so if you do a loan through 21st Century Finance, we get paid commissions from banks. If you do a structure through accounting, we obviously charge you for that structure. But what we've done is we've packaged everything together, so all our businesses work together. At the end of the day, every part of the academy is a business that makes money. And at the end of the day, what we do as 21st Century Property Direct, we provide 2 services. We educate you for free, and then for those of you who know that you're not going to implement, you can come with us and we can actually help you find the property and shortlist the property. It's that kind of a deal. So it's not for free. We do make money out of all the structures, the finance, the insurance, etc. that we do. Now, for those who are interested, number 1, there's the form. The first section to fill out is, look, I just want to join. I want to get started. Let's get me pre-approved. Let me speak to accounting and finance, and then let's find the property and we can help you with your first property. The goal with this membership was originally just to help you with your first property, not to hold your hand for 10 years, okay? We'll find you the first property, then you can go out and use our team to find your own properties, okay? That's what the idea behind the membership is. Some people now are coming back for the second and third, which is fine. Those who are coming back for the second and third, what we've done now is the private mentoring, which we're offering as well. Now, the 21st Century Property Direct private mentoring is also available. It's with myself. And basically my goal is to get you into 10 properties over 10 years or with $5 million worth of debt as soon as possible. He wants to get into a lot of debt. Remember, debt is good. So this is for people really who just want to get started. They want a coach to basically, help them along. There's a limited amount of spaces that are left in this membership, and I'll talk about that as well. This is definitely not for everyone because the free service is very good. So this is for people only that just want to get started. They're busy professionals. I need someone that can do all this stuff for me, and I just want to do my job, and that's fine. The mentoring includes mentoring with myself. I'm only limiting this to 200 people. There's 27 places left. There's actually less places than that left. And after the 200 people, I'm never mentoring any more people again. Now, I'm not saying that as a sales pitch. I'm saying that because I physically won't have the time because I'm speaking at around 30 seminars around Australia this year. Jamie's booked me out completely. There's only so much time that I have in a week to actually interact with clients. So originally I was going to offer this and see what happens. Now I know that the reality is after 200, I'm just not doing it anymore. But we'll have Nigel Kibble and Craig Webb offering their services and their private mentoring as well. So there's only limited places that are available. You also get a home study program on tax minimisation, asset protection, and you get access to exclusive developers and personal introductions to key experts in every area. So I'm going to introduce you to solicitors and developers in your major capital city. I specialise in the Melbourne market. If you want to invest in Queensland, I recommend that you do the free membership with Nigel Kibble and Craig Webb. I really like only doing the Melbourne market. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's why if you want to invest in Melbourne market, definitely do this membership. I'm an expert on the Melbourne market on every suburb. But if you want to invest in the Brisbane or the Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast, we've got a consultant here, Craig Webb, who's here full time. And he basically lives here. He looks after all our clients as well. He's probably a better person to deal with than myself because I spend all my time in Melbourne running around looking at projects in Melbourne. But some people like diversifying and looking at the Melbourne market as well. You also get a 2-hour strategic review every year with the following experts: 21st Century Property Portfolio Manager, accounting, finance and insurance every year for 10 years. Now, what we're doing is we're offering a 2-day finance and property mastermind seminar. You can attend these events as much as you can. Who feels like there was so much content delivered that they've got a headache now? And I mean, there's a lot of stuff delivered, wasn't there? You go to a lot of seminars, a lot of rah-rah and jumping up and down. We don't do that. We really want to give you as much content to educate you so you can go out there and start implementing. That's really the goal of the 2-day Property Direct seminar. We also are planning to have 4-day advanced multi-speaker seminars in the future. And we also do a 1-day due diligence and property use workshop, which we are conducting as well. There's also a 2-day due diligence and market research field trip, which is basically the express weekend that we offer in all the major capital cities. Now, you've been to the 2-day seminar, basically. Now, let me talk to you about the 4-day event. Now, we are thinking at this point in time, instead of doing a 4-day, just doing an advanced 2-day. Because we've had feedback from a lot of our clients saying 4 days is just so long. We've got to take Friday off and Monday off. So we thought about condensing all the information into an advanced 2-day version of what we've done today. Different speakers. And basically, we've got Warren Black. We've got a solicitor that's coming back talking about contracts of sale, because that's something we haven't covered at all. We just don't have the time to do it in a 2-day. We've got an architect and a town planner. We've got a quantity surveyor, financial planner, buyer's advocacy agent, insurance underwriter, BDM from NAB, professional property options trader, senior valuer. Who would like to see a valuer doing a live valuation? Yeah, I've never seen that done before in any event, and I'd love to just get someone in, pay them to do a private valuation, and they can walk you through the whole process. I think that will be a very valuable exercise. A property developer, we're actually going to get a property developer that can actually spend time and explain to you what they are doing and why they do certain developments, talk about profit margin negotiation, etc. Builder, property manager, landlord's insurance specialist, BDM from Deposit Power, just like BMT, we're going to get Deposit Power to come in, give you a bit of a spill on deposit bonds and give you all the brochures and information as well. Renovation specialist, pest control specialist and others, and we also get George to come along as well. So what George does, he actually does live trading as well. So he does, simulated trading, obviously, because the weekends doesn't do live trading, but he actually does more advanced strategies as well. Okay, so you also get the fast track home study. Now, this is a home study that was recorded a while back in Melbourne by a guy called Warren Bolshay. Has anyone heard of Warren Bolshay? No one. A few people at the back. Okay, so this person he's retired now. He used to teach at the academy, and now he stopped teaching altogether. He doesn't teach anymore. In fact, he's left Australia and is now in the UK, buying up property in the UK. And he used to be a speaker, like myself, for the academy, and he teaches people how to do cash flow positive property. Now, what he does with cash flow positive property, to clarify that, he actually buys property around major capital cities and does cosmetic renovations. So he manufactures the cash flow positive aspect by adding value to the property, increasing the rental. And that's what he's an expert on. You can buy this home study separately from the academy, but he's an expert on controlling the valuation process. He actually inspired me to a large extent in the early days to get into property, and I copied a lot of the methodology that he actually used over 10 years ago. He'll show you how to buy property with virtually no money, how to renovate properties and create equity for your next purchase. All he does is buys properties, does a renovation, revalues, increases the rental, buys the next one. It's very much a different strategy to what I do. My strategy is a lot more passive, but I guess his strategy doesn't rely on market growth at all because he creates the capital growth in the property. The beauty of it is that you'll learn how to build a large cash flow positive property portfolio by following an easy step-to-step formula. The biggest thing about this home study is it's like painting by the numbers, bless you. So it's step 1, step 2, step 3. And this is what I love about it. So number 1 is assess the financial position of yourself, so find out how much you can borrow. Number 2 is research and strategic finance. Determine asset and area, cash flow, so how do you analyse cash flow in a particular area. Purchase under market value by negotiating with the agents. Maximise the asset's value by doing a cosmetic renovation. Maximise the asset's income by increasing the rental on the property after it had a cosmetic renovation to it. Protect the asset, so we're talking about asset protection and structures. Revalue the asset, utilise new equity to buy more property, and repeat the process. It's just step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's very simple to do. So if you're into renovating properties, this is a very good home study to have. And also property trading for profit, meaning that you buy property, renovate, and you flip it before you settle. Success psychology, etc. You can buy this home study from the Academy at $1,995 as well. Now, we also throw in the asset protection and tax minimisation home study. This is a recording of Warren Black. Who enjoyed the presentation by Warren Black? He's very knowledgeable in his field. So we've put a home study together which basically teaches you how to become an asset protection expert. Now, Warren Black's been in the industry for years. As you know, he's a solicitor and accountant. He worked for the ATO for over 10 years, and he's got an insight into the auditing process and structures. You'll learn the importance of owning nothing and controlling everything. That's really what the home study is about. How do you control everything without owning anything? You'll learn about family trust, hybrid trust, discretionary trust, and corporate trustees, how to buy property in a self-managed super fund, which we haven't covered at this event. Also, how to buy an investment property in family trust and claim negative gearing benefits against your PYG income. And also, how to make your owner-occupied house a complete tax write-off. Okay, so there's strategies there we can claim deductions on your owner-occupied property as well. This home study by itself sells for $495. It's a one-day recording. It's a whole day of Warren Black that's been recorded in Melbourne at the beginning of last year. Weekend's bonus is, for the guys that want to jump on board with myself as their private mentor, we're going to throw in those home studies as well. On top of that, you will get the recording of this home study as well that's been recorded the last 2 days. So we've got 21st Century Fast Track Home Study Program, the Tax Minimisation Asset Protection Home Study, and we're also going to throw in the 2-day recording of this weekend as well. So if you've done the testimonials, you're probably going to be on the home study as well. So it includes the 2-day seminar. Now, we are going to be charging for these events in the future. We're thinking of charging $295. Originally, where we actually set these up, we were getting about 50 to 60 people attending these events. Now we're getting to the stage where we're getting way over 100 people. And I think because property now is the flavour of the month again, a lot of people are interested in property. So we're finding that the venues that we're targeting, they have a maximum seating of about 150 people. So we will start charging for these events in the future. Not as yet, they are going to be free, especially the next one that we're doing in Brisbane will be free. But in the future, if we're getting too many people, we're going to start charging for them. Who reckons there'll be great value for $300 to attend a 2-day event? Yeah? I reckon there's more value than $300 in this event. The 4-day will be about $2,000. The 1-day due diligence and properties workshop and webinars. We're also doing a 1-day due diligence and bus trip as well in the major capital cities. And the Warren Bosche home study as well. So you're getting basically value with $6,170. Now, the membership, if you're an Academy member, it's $3,995. If you're a non-member, it's $4,995. Can we have the forms given out to, everyone's got them already, great. Now, who'd like to get this membership for free? Okay. I want to fill out the 27 places that I have and I just don't want to do any more, okay? So I'm going to offer you something special. For those who are interested for getting this membership for free, what we're going to do is this. To qualify, you need to enroll this weekend for whatever you qualify for. How many people here are an Academy member already? Okay, great. Home study member. So you guys get the cheaper version. Those who are non-members, it's $4,995. Get a pre-approval from 21st Century Finance in 90 days. You've got 3 months to get a pre-approval. Go to see 21st Century Accounting for your asset protection and your structures. And what I want to do is on the settlement of your first property, within the month of the settlement, I'm going to give you the membership money back, rebated. Okay, so if you paid $3,995, within roughly a month of settlement of your first property, you'll get that amount back. If it's $3,995, it's $4,995, it's regardless. It's only for people that are serious about property, and also it's mainly for people that want to invest in the Melbourne market, because that's what I specialise in. If you want to invest in the Brisbane or Sunshine Coast market or Gold Coast, we have Craig Webb, who lives here and looks after our clients. Craig, can you just stand up and wave to everyone? There's Craig Webb there. Now, Craig is an expert on the Sunshine Coast, which is one of the fastest growing areas in Australia. So if you are interested in having a chat with Craig, definitely go and see him at the end of today and have a chat with him. He can tell you all about the market in Queensland. If you want to know about the Melbourne market, I'm an expert on the Melbourne market. I can tell you every suburb, everything that's happening there. Apart from that, we're doing well on time, 7:30, so we're going to finish off now. Once again, I thank you for attending the event. It's been a privilege and honour to spend the weekend with you guys. I hope you guys got a lot out of the weekend. The best favour you can give me is to write me a really good testimonial and email me directly, okay? Now, my email address is conrad@21stca.com.au. So you can email me directly, and I'd love to hear the feedback from you guys for attending the event. Also, if you want to record a testimonial, hang around. We've got the camera crew here. If you've got anything positive to say about the event, if you enjoy the event and what you've learnt, we'd love to share this. We want to get as many people involved in these events as we possibly can. The last thing I want to say to you is that the most important thing about this event is what you do afterwards. If you've sat here for 2 days, and you've definitely got a lot of education now, you've got a lot of tools that you can use. If you do nothing next week, you've wasted the weekend, haven't you? So what I want to encourage you guys to do is take action. If anything, get the free membership with Property Direct. If you're very serious about property and you want to grow aggressively and you want to coach like myself, go and sign up for the coaching session. Have 12 months with me and I'll coach and I'll get you to buy a lot of property and get into a lot of debt. Finally, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much for attending. I'll hang around for half an hour to answer any questions. Thank you very much.